my
God,
God.
I'm on a weekend.
Insane. We can dive into that more during the actual show as we go through the issues, because my theory was, Jay, that you're just going to go 0 to 6 in order.
We don't have to do anything. We can just go where the discussion takes us, you know, and that's the
fair.
great thing. I know.
I guess if Mona's not here, we shouldn't just do the ones that.
Eric will be here at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He already messaged me. He was out walking his dogs, so he got done his meeting, so he'll be at the top of the hour. Ann will be here as soon as Blue Box raids into us because she's on that channel right now. Hey, Patrick, I got your package. I got your care package. I hid the Lay's ketchup and potato chips already, so yeah, very nice of Patrick to send us a really neat.
He's sending you food now?
Yeah. He sent us a whole bunch of stuff. Cookies you can only get in Canada, a lot of tidbits and things like that. And the guy, it's really, So, Steven, since the last time you were here, I made partner on Twitch. So,
congratulations!
Thank you very much. It's going very well.
I had a Prime subscribe I wasn't using, so I subscribed when I signed up.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, very excited. Those 3rd edition numbers you were talking about with Ben.
Hey, Gabriel.
Back in 2010, 2011, when I was working on my book, I had access to LexisNexis from my graduate program in publishing at Emerson. And my roommate, Britt, who was a late Circle member, BK Triader, he and I just dove in there and we pulled a bunch of the sales figures by Isbits, because that's how LexisNexis did it.
Right.
And I've had that file since then, and I sent it over to Ben after we had him on the show. And it's really just interesting because his AD&D and D&D figures are in hundreds of thousands of sales, for the books.
Oh, yeah.
And like a lot of these 3rd edition splat books, they were like 8,000 sold, 5,000 sold. It was just incredibly low sales.
I think I have the numbers for everything up to 3.5 before we started developing 3.5, and the numbers were really good. And if I remember right, and there's something to keep in mind, is this is sell to data, not sell through data, and it started my long argument with Wizards of the Coast over the numbers that they spout about D&D players, which I started arguing with them in 2000, and I continue to argue with them. I'm like, you were nuts. Those numbers are not correct. And I want to say, like, the core books were selling 300, 400,000 units within that period of time, which were great sales numbers. But I remember going in and it's like, Steven, we have 5 million D&D players in the U.S. alone. And I'm like, are they sharing books?
Yeah.
Like, because this is sell too. This doesn't count the stuff that somebody got for Christmas and just sit there, or the college student who's too busy to play, or the parent who's too busy to play, right?
Sure.
Or the ones that are just sitting on store shelves or in warehouses. Like, this can't be true. And knowing the organized play numbers and what organized play was doing, I'm like, the numbers are good, but they're not that good. And they're like, no, we've done studies. Well, where are those studies? Well, we have them around here somewhere.
We have it here somewhere. That's awesome.
I'm pulling up that old spreadsheet. I know it's not the focus of this show, but just for instance, Player's Handbook 3.0, whenever we pulled this data, 162,849. Dungeon Master's Guide, 104,000. Monster Manual 1, 107. We've got things in here: Forgotten Realms campaign setting, Defenders of the Faith, Masters of the Wild. Those are all doing about 40,000.
Yeah, that's probably sell-through numbers.
I'd have to go and pull up LexisNexis again and see what we were doing.
Like I said, I haven't looked at the spreadsheet for a long time, so my memory could be faulty.
To see everyone,
I doubt.
Yeah. Well, my memory is pretty good, but it's human memory, right?
I feel like LexisNexis reported by Isbins sold by the vendors, like E. Dalton, Walden Books,
edition.
I know Mike recommends Fantasy Grounds.
I might have been doing a lot of work to make sure that that worked. I tend to use Roll20 right now because they gave me a lifetime membership when I was at Paizo, and I'm like, well, I've got all this crap.
Troll Games, join the fray.
But at the same time, I'm constantly bitching about Roll20 when I'm actually using it, and have to cut that out of streams because I'm like, oh.
So, Gabriel, what I would suggest is see Celestian below you, Celestian Mike. He coded for Fantasy Grounds, particularly the classic D&D, including Temple of Elemental Evil. So if you have Fantasy Grounds questions, Mike is the man on that. But there's some people who use Roll20. Casey's talking about Roll20. I would ask questions of people out there. It's a tough question for me to answer because I barely use them because I'm all miniatures and terrain. So, yeah.
No, yeah. Oh my God, I ran for my company. I went out to New Orleans and we ran in-life games, and it's the first time I've done so since the pandemic. Wow, did I miss that?
In person, you mean?
Yeah, in person.
Oh
right?
my gosh, there's nothing like it, man.
So I'm like, wow, it's after playing online for a good 2.5 years, I was just, this is the way I actually want to play.
So, Steven, I hybridize it. Like, a lot of times I'll have my guys in person here, but I'll have guests remote in through Zoom because we move the figures on the table and all, and so it works very well in a mixed game. So,
I play in a long-term 5e campaign, which actually we went through 1 through 20th level, and we're actually playing the new Marvel right now because our characters are morphing through different games as epic play. And they do that. They play at home, and I zoom in, and they move the miniatures, and I got to go, no, square next to it. Yeah. No, square next to it.
It takes a little getting used to, but you get a flow. I mean, I have 3 cameras on my table, so it gets some good angles on it.
And Jay's not using squares. He's just kind of like,
yeah, we don't use hex paper
attack
at all. Yeah, it's more of almost like a battlefield tactical.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. It looks really cool.
Thank you. Now I forgot what button I'm about to hit. There we go. Let's get this thing cranking. We're a few minutes early, but Anna's still on Blue Box because he had a power outage, so he started late. But and Eric Mona will be in too. So it'll be
this one
really
came
awesome.
together in 24 hours.
Yeah.
He's working on Mona time.
Well, yeah.
If it's not a real meeting, he'll show up whenever.
I love you. I have Unity, Gabriel. I have both actually, but Unity's got all the bells and whistles. So, and Dice 2021, welcome as well. Look at that. Oh, Steam Still Murder, another Twitch channel. Thanks for the follow just now. I'll hop you up on the notifications. Just very cool. Steven, my apologies. I should have VIP badged you. It's my apologies. You're up in chat.
No worries.
Casey will tell you I am a little OCD when it comes to Twitch stuff. Too much.
Well, you got to be to do it right.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
All right, tonight. So this turned into a discussion of Anna and I just going through Living Greyhawk Journal 0 through 6 to we don't know what direction it'll go, but it's going to be a so much better discussion because we got some great guests tonight. So we've been putting this off. What's that, Casey?
You have the words Living Greyhawk in this episode title, but you know that's going to get my attention.
It's a funny story, and I'll tell that in a second when we come on when we're visible here. But yeah, so we just picked the first. I was gonna do 0 to 5, and then 6. I'm like, ooh, Gary Hooley and Death Knight 6. I better just throw that one in.
Gary? He better get his butt online.
Yeah, well, he said he would provide some commentary. I'm not sure if he was able to get on tonight at all. So, but that was nice of him. So, yep, we will. Just marking of your campaign longevity to a couple of longtime gaming friends. Sent them links. The Mechaform, thank you. Yep. So we're finishing up Adventure 966 Thursday. I have the Slavs on Slav Squad, which will be 967. It's about 3,250 sessions is the guess. We don't know how many it is. Here comes Blue Box in, so I'm going to flip it over to live. Thank you, John and Party and Blue Box RPG, and Anna will be on in a second, and so will Eric. And good to see you, everyone. Hey. I was saying this turned out from a discussion of just myself and Anna into a great discussion with some unbelievable guests tonight. Anna will be on shortly. I know she just got done over at Blue Box. Eric Mona will be on a little bit, but let me introduce the two guests we have on now. Everyone, Casey Brown, and Casey has to get credit for putting this together. Thank you so very much, Casey, for doing that. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this discussion. And if you don't know the other gentleman, another legend of the era of the Living Greyhawk era, from like 2000 until what time, Stephen, Radney-MacFarland, did you come work for and participate in this great undertaking? And look at this, here he comes. And welcome, Stephen.
Hey. Let's see, I started working at Wizards in the RPGA in 2000. I'm pretty sure I quit in 2006.
Well,
if I remember correctly.
Look, Eric's got those eyes like this. So yes,
I know some of Steven's stories.
Yeah, you know quite a bit of my stories.
Yeah, my favorite are the ones that I'm not involved in. Just to be clear, but yeah. How you doing, Steven?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Eric.
Great. So see you at Gen Con, of course. I don't know if you missed Gen Con, but
I did not miss Gen Con. Yeah. Oh my God, did I not miss Gen Con?
It sounded like it was a great time, but I have so many people I know that have got COVID from it.
Oh yeah, that was a special guest.
COVID.
that MFer was special guest at my wedding reception on Saturday.
Well, I
2-year delayed wedding reception because of COVID. We got married 2 years ago.
Casey has it too.
I could have told you.
I have the COVID right now. I'm taking my medicine.
Nice.
And
hello.
Ivermectin 18.
Hi, Anna.
Hello.
And a hype train too, everyone. Thank you so very much. Stephen was with the wonders of WotC for 6-7 years, and Eric.
Oh, I went back, just not working on Living Greyhawk.
So we're going to get some great discussions here, and then Eric is kind enough to come on after both of you, all of you, having some craziness over at Gen Con and just coming back. Eric, thanks for coming on as well tonight for this great discussion and a really hidden. And if you can find them, that's great. These are hidden gems right now, and that's the Living Greyhawk journals. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place to get information. In particular, if you can find a certain one of the only ones I have, Eric, this one, because of this that was inside it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
The Malden map.
Oh, yes.
Uncle Fuzz, thank you. The legendary Malden map is inside this one. And what a great, we did a whole show on it. And I asked Malden to come on too, but he didn't respond either. I know Dennis is very busy, but I would love to have him hop on as well.
Maybe he'll confirm 15 minutes before.
You never know.
It's too late. It's too late now.
So I want to flip over and I want to show this because someone's headless in this.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. The legends in this picture. Yep. So here's Steven with his button-down shirt and no head, and there's Eric. Look at how young you look there, Eric.
I mean, look at how young I look right now. Awesome.
Way to walk right in.
Come on, man! I'm older than all of you, so.
I'm older than you. Come on, don't try that.
I am old enough that I can't quite see all the faces in that picture. I'll take your word for it that there's some.
What a
some
great
really good
picture.
people there. Do I see a Russ Taylor in there? Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, Russ is in
He's
there.
there.
And
Yes.
then Meldon, and then Fred, and then is that me? Is that child me?
That's you right there.
Yeah, that's
Oh
definitely
God,
you.
what a lovely
And
cherub.
Steven's right here, and the only one decapitated in the picture. But you have some
Nice.
unbelievable legends here in this. In this, and I wanted to show this because this is like a kickoff for Living Greyhawk. If I recall, this is 2000 Gen Con.
Yeah, that was the year we launched it. I as I recall, it's getting up there nowadays. But yeah, I think we launched it in 2000.
So Steven was telling me a story that this is before he was actually working for him. Right? You hadn't even started working yet?
Right. The third edition was about to launch. I'd wanted to go to Gen Con for a long time. I got a red-eye ticket. I told my bosses I'm going to this thing. And then about a week before Gen Con, I got hired. And so I hadn't started working there yet. And I remember I had a bunch of Living Greyhawk tickets and my friends couldn't get them. And so I'm like, I'm going to have a chance to play this all the time. Here, have my tickets, guys. Like, go have fun. And which they were very grateful for, because that was kind of one of the hot tickets at the convention that year, is being able to play in those first Living Greyhawk games. So, so I was wandering around, like, just trying to figure stuff out. That's when I met Gary Gygax at convention. I saw things I shouldn't have seen. I saw things I should have seen. And then it came back home, and like less than a week later, I came to the WotC offices for my first day. No computer, nowhere to sit. They were totally unprepared for me to get to work.
Classic.
Yeah, they sat me in a place, gave me a pile of papers that I started scribbling away from. The next day, David Wise gave me his so I could get some work done. I was all like, what am I getting into?
Malden's right here, by the way. That's
Awesome.
Dennis. Yeah. So.
Oh.
Yep. So Eric,
Yes,
I think
sir.
Steven also mentioned this. There was there's a year -1 in Living Greyhawk. Is that correct? That there was a pre-planned year, the year before the ramp up. So this is as of year 0, but there was a -1. Is that true?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure
okay.
we would all use the same terms, but I definitely know that Living Greyhawk was in the hopper. It's funny, Steven says he started, a couple of weeks before, or got hired a couple of weeks before Gen Con. I was the same way, but just pretty much the year before, you know, and so it's a pretty common thing, I guess, to hire up right before the big show and be like, good luck, buddy. So yeah, in that regard, I think our onboarding was very similar. Living Greyhawk as a campaign, I think was a glimmer in the eye of WotC since the beginning of the strategy for 3rd edition. It was baked into the strategy, and basically I was already a volunteer coordinator for it, as I recall. Again, someone might be able to be like, no, I used a TARDIS and you're wrong about this. But I think that I became one of the Circle of Five, as they called it at the time, before I got hired. But then when I got hired, it was very much like, okay, you're going to be, my title was Global Publications Coordinator, which basically just meant you get Jeff Quick's job editing Polyhedron. And we're going to add a new magazine to support Living Greyhawk. And I was freelancing for the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer at the time, and had since the couple of years prior to that been like a pretty high-level continuity consultant, visiting the team a couple times a year, some of their planning stuff for Greyhawk. So I was already kind of plugged in on the Greyhawk side and on the RPGA side when I got hired to work in the RPGA. And so they had basically one of the heads of the campaign who was also working at the company. And as it turns out, like all of those are full-time jobs, and so it's very difficult to edit 2 magazines, launch and run a campaign. And part of that, I think, is not just with my stuff, but with the RPGA in general, the acknowledgement that we needed more hands on deck, and that's where Steven came in.
You had
go ahead,
please go ahead.
The interesting thing about it is I also interviewed for that Jeff Quick job, right? And so because I had moved to the Seattle area, I moved out with my employer out there. I was involved with the RPGA in Colorado, so I was like, I'm going to see what the RPGA is doing out here. Got a message from Jeff Quick. We started talking. He's like, you've got the skill set we need because I want to move out of this position. You should apply for this job, which I did. And I had a series of interviews, and which were frustrating because they were long and nobody would say something for a long time. And I got one call that's like, yeah, Stephen, we think we're going to hire you. And then another call that's like, nope, we're not. I was like, well, that was weird. And then when I found out Erik got the job, because I'd known Erik by reputation of his work and on AOL Online, back in the TSR Online days, I'm like, and Living Greyhawk was announced. I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, okay, yeah, I got it. And then,
but then one of the cool things was a year later, you moved in and you had all the qualifications. And,
right.
So it was like, and a similar background to me too. So I always felt like we for the most part, kind of had a somewhat similar history within the RPGA beast.
Yes.
And that was really useful for collaboration and things.
Absolutely.
So I beat him slightly, just temporarily, but he got there very quickly thereafter. So, and was a powerhouse for years after that.
Erik, I tried
for a year after that.
Okay, but it was quite a powerhouse to be reckoned with.
So everyone, Casey.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, everyone say thank you to Casey for getting this thing.
Oh, they are
being the linchpin.
Thank you, Casey.
Yeah, no, thank you to both of them for coming on short notice. Erik, when you said polyhedron, I actually emailed polyhedron at Wizards last night to see if it still worked and went to anyone.
That's awesome.
But that's Erik's old email address, was polyhedron@wizards.com.
Wow.
I emailed the original 6 email addresses, which are in the back of each of these Living Greyhawk journals for the campaign staff, just to see if any of them, there were 3 of them that are AOL. I mean, I still have an AOL one. I just don't check it. I know it exists. But unfortunately, all of them bounced back. And then speaking of year -1, in Living Greyhawk Journal 2, early in it, they talk about the legacy of valor. And we've had the Jeff Triad guys on to talk about this convention that kind of predates Living Greyhawk.
Yeah, the -1. Yeah.
Set up their regional plot lines and get people excited.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the Jeff Triad guys who wrote that article, I believe. It's on pages 2 to 3 of issue 2. So when we talk about year -1, I think that certainly qualifies.
Well, there was a great, I mean, it was a tremendous amount of coordination went into Living Greyhawk. It really was a major part of the marketing and launch strategy for 3rd edition. They wanted to use Greyhawk to be the sort of, I'm going to use the word generic setting for 3.0. And their interpretation of that and my interpretation of that was always a little bit different, but nonetheless, that was the plan. And so there was a lot of coordination, a lot of money that went into kind of getting it right. And part of that meant building a structure that would kind of address some of the challenges that we'd seen with Living City, which was the first really big campaign. And then there were a lot of little micro, Living Jungle, Living Death, all these sort of niche campaigns, but they were all very similar in structure. And this time we tried to a lot of people really wanted to affect the plot. That's always something that organized play gamers feel is really important. Even though everyone's kind of playing the same adventure, it feels like more of an impact is being made when your actions at the table, or maybe the aggregate of everyone's actions at the table, impact the campaign. And so we started thinking, how do we do that? And that's really where the idea of the regional triads came in. And I think that, like a lot of things, that was kind of the killer app. I think that was one of the things that people were really appealed to people about the campaign, is that they could have some measure of local control. It was a thing that actually encouraged travel to neighboring or even far-flung regions to get a little bit different flavor, which I think was very good for the campaign early on. And then we also introduced the concept of regional scenarios, which allowed people then to write their own storylines. And that's where it all started going wrong. I think, Stephen can really talk about that, because at a certain point, I got transferred out of RPGA and was focusing more on the magazines. And at that point, it was kind of like, good luck, Stephen, bye. And then he had to do
here's the stack.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we can get into that a little bit later, but I think that was like a double-edged sword in some way. That was the real innovation and appeal of the new campaign, but it largely, I think, was somewhat unsustainable as time went on, just at the scale that we had chosen.
So we got a ton of new people on tonight, and I'm assuming a lot of them, Stephen, you from your there may be people that you work with now in your new company, or some people that heard. And thank you all for coming on to this chat. We talk, we're majority Greyhawk here. Anna, everyone knows the great map maker Anna Meyer. She was running a little late on the Blue Box channel talking about some stuff, and Casey Brown, who's a legend in Living Greyhawk as well from the Bandit Kingdoms. Stephen Radney-MacFarland, Eric Mona, of course, everyone knows, and myself, I'm Jay, Lord Gazamba. My Greyhawk campaign predates it all, 1980. We're in our 42nd year and going strong here, and just loving everything. There's a real resurgence of Greyhawk, so we like talking about the old days because you get some ideas for your campaign now from these kind of discussions. In particular, these Living Greyhawk gazettes or journals. As Gary Julian just said, hey, Naz, 48 months, our longest subscriber, not a close friend of mine, but he's a close friend now, the Naz, 48 months sub. Wow. Thank you. Back in the day, Gary said, this legendary book with Eric's name, and as we see, we got Gary Julian, Eric Mona, Sean Reynolds, Fred Whining, and I'm assuming you got some of this in here. Stephen, is your name in this?
No, this was well before.
Before? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Gary says that the journals are overflow from this. Is that true, Eric, for the most part? That's how the journals started?
Sections of it.
Okay.
Probably. There. Yeah, I mean, actually, as I recall, and Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, but the book that eventually became the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer had a couple of different incarnations. And one of those incarnations was a big hardcover that was going to have sort of an encyclopedic approach to the lands of the Flannis done by Roger Moore, and then a handful of additional kind of lore articles at the end about various subjects written by me and Steve Wilson. And I think around the time it became clear that only one half of that project was actually manifesting, things got recast a little bit, and we brought Gary and Fred and Sean Reynolds in to recast it into what eventually became the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. And in that new format, there were some elements of that back matter that didn't find a home. And I do think some of that may have made its way into the journal. Certainly the article that kicked it all off with Living Greyhawk Journal number 0, the little insert that we did in Dragon, was an article Gary Julian and I tried to sell to Dragon for about 3 years until they finally found the right spot for it. And I think that right spot was now I'm the editor and I get to decide what to print. So, so we did it with Dave Gross' blessing, the editor of Dragon at the time. So yeah, I think there was some overflow stuff. As we go through it today, I honestly, I haven't really looked at these in years. And
good, so this will be reminiscent.
If I see some stuff that was definitely overflow, I'll definitely count it. But again, it's like I'm looking right now, the Kingdom of Keeland article in number 1. I wouldn't say that was stuff that was cut from Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. This is Gary wrote it, so he'll confirm this, but it was definitely all from that development, where we had to come up with the answers to questions that had never even been posed outside of an AOL chat room or Greyhawk or something. And so we were developing a much larger picture of the world, and not all that would fit in the format of Living Greyhawk Gazetteer.
Okay.
So a fair thing to say.
Can I ask you a publishing question, Eric?
Go for it.
Did the journal pay like a traditional magazine? Or there's no advertising in it, right? So
no, it was just like Polyhedron. It was the same rates, which were the TSR house rates at the time. It was probably, I don't know, 5 cents a word or something like that.
That's pretty good back then.
I'm pretty confident actually that we paid the same rate as Dragon paid. Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But
Gary just said Eric paid well, and also Gary said Keeland material was cut from the LGG draft to create the LGJ number 1 article.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, we would have 13 pages of Keeland in that one book, but we were all pretty new back in the day, so I'm not surprised we massively overwrote some sections here and there.
That's
At least we
interesting to
turned them
hear
in.
about the thing. That's good. One
Here's
of the things I thought Living Greyhawk could have done better was monetizing itself and rereading these issues. I'm like, oh, there was a $20 RPGA membership fee, and that
Yes.
got you the journal.
Yeah.
But if you weren't getting constantly new memberships, it's hard to grow and pay for all your expenses and whatnot. The triads weren't paid.
Well, it's interesting that you point that out because, and this again is something I'd love to hear Stephen's perspective on, but I think
Please.
ultimately that funding mechanism is what killed not only the Living Greyhawk Journal, but the Polyhedron as well, because I think the idea was, for the longest time, that $20 fee, $25 fee is what would defray the cost of the magazines, essentially. And what was happening at a similar time was Magic the Gathering was huge, and they had the DCI, which was just basically request a number and you get a number. And they had tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of members. And RPGA always kind of struggled, to get over a certain hump. And so, again, this is near my transition time, so I'll hand the mic to Stephen in just a second for his perspective. But mine, from just kind of overhearing things and seeing the way that the wind was blowing, the idea was, well, if we make membership free, then there's no barrier to entry, and we can give out tons and tons of games, and people can play the game. They get a number, play the game at the show, and then they're on, and we can justify our expenses as a huge marketing thing if we have 40, 50, 60, 70,000 members, as opposed to if we had 20,000. So at that point, though, the funding mechanism for the magazines goes away, and that's when the magazines, both of them, became sections in the other magazines. I got transferred to a different department, and all of a sudden RPGA membership was free, and you get what you pay for. Stephen, what was your perspective?
Wow. So my perspective is, as a longtime RPGA member, the interesting thing is I never paid for my membership. Not really.
That's true.
And the reason was, and I'm sure Eric did this as well, is you would go to tournaments, and if you won tournaments, you would get like a $5 to $10 gift certificate based on whatever you got that you could use at the mail order hobby shop, which was already kind of going in the pooper at that period of time, or you could spend it to get an RPGA membership. And so I'd go to 2 or 3 conventions a year, rake up at least $25 worth of these things, send it to TSR, get my membership. And it turns out there was a large percentage of people actually doing that. And then as it went over to Wizards of the Coast kind of got rid of that program. And so you had this $25 membership. Memberships were going down. I remember when I was part of the local Seattle group, the Seattle Mob, I remember having a knockdown, drag out argument with, and Scott Magner was there. And I'm like, I really don't think the RPGA should be an exclusive organization. I think it should be an inclusive organization, right? This whole idea. And, this comes from, I remember second edition playtests where you could be part of the playtest if you were an RPGA club, and trying to get my friends to create an RPGA club. And they're like, that's a lot of money. We don't want to spend it just to playtest some rules. And I'm like, you're nuts. This is great. This is a great opportunity. And so I had already had the glimmering of that coming in. I'm like, and then coming from, a thing that was more corporate, and they taught us profit and loss, numbers. I realized very quickly that the organized play section of Wizards of the Coast isn't even built that way. There was no profit coming in from anything. It would just go into the corporate profit, and we just had budgets, and they were marketing budgets. And it's all like, and so that's when I started talking to the folks over at the DCI and said, hey, can we convert the RPGA into this free membership? Can we use the marketing budget to do another program where we can send stuff out? And that's where we got like the Fist of Immerkul and the campaign cards and all this stuff that, because basically we just want to grab as many D&D players as possible, right? And then down the line, because I'm very interested in sort of tracking play numbers and play patterns and everything else, and maybe down the line we can figure out what people like and what people don't. And because we're really just a marketing arm, a very fun marketing arm of Wizards of the Coast. And so I was a main driver for doing that. So, and of course, once you take down those barriers to entry, well, more people join your club. and which has a lot of benefit and some drawbacks. And then you try to then you have to deal with fraud prevention and all sorts of other stuff, and that's what we did. So I was. Eric may have a different recollection, but I was very happy when we changed that. And plus, we didn't have the magazines to offer anymore. They, at the period of time, Peter, like I was talking about in the beginning of this whole thing, that first year at Wizards of the Coast was weird and eye-opening. We had two rounds of big layoffs. We had Peter Atkinson leave the company. We had an earthquake. I came into this company and just seeing loads of people that all they seemed to do was play Legends of the Five Rings all day. And I'm like, what the hell is that job?
EverQuest as well.
EverQuest and all sorts of stuff. And then within 6 months, I walk in and there's whispers, layoffs. And I'm like, well, I'm the new guy. There's no way I'm sticking around.
Wow.
And then almost immediately, Dave Wise was like, your job's safe, Steven. And I'm like, really? Why? And they're like, because you actually do things. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Nice.
You can't overstate the trauma that came around roughly every 6 months at WotC for years with those layoffs, because everyone in that building had kind of worked their whole lives to get a chance to crack into that Magic Kingdom. And so you weren't just losing your job, you were kind of giving up on your dream to some extent. And it just passed over the company like the crystalline entity from Star Trek The Next Generation. It just killed indiscriminately. And I think Steven's right. If you were competent at your job, that certainly helped. But it was
not
terrifying.
Always. Yeah.
It was terrifying. It was the best of worlds, and it really was the worst of worlds for those reasons. If stress on the stress meter.
Yeah. Over the decade that I was at WotC, I survived at least 9 rounds of layoffs.
Wow.
And the 10th one got me. And I was, strangely enough, I was so happy at that period of time. I was like dancing into my meeting and like, yeah, let's fucking do this. Right. So, because, the stress of that over and over again is just, it's terrible.
Another thing was happening at that time, which is really interesting. And I really saw this transition occur, which was when I got there in 1999, Pokemon was at the height of its power and money was flowing through that building like wine. And so, there's a little bit of a problem. Why don't you hire a new guy to help? Just the solve the problem with money thing was, kind of awesome, but also you could tell it was not sustainable. And then Hasbro came in and bought the company, and they rightfully wanted a little bit tighter controls on stuff, wanted to focus on kind of the core mission. And so a lot of stuff changed in a pretty quick succession, including my transfer over to periodicals, and then periodicals getting spun out of the company by 2002. So that period from 99 to 2002 saw tremendous change. And in that period, third edition was just killing it. It was so much more popular than the end of second edition. Like the end of second edition, things were not good. And so they turned that thing around massively. So you had really happy fans, a really engaged, unified community in a way that had never happened before. The D20 boom was still at its height. So there's other companies that are supporting the whole thing. And it was a really, really special time, but it was also a time of really significant change on an almost, biannual basis. So it was the best 6 years I ever worked at a company in those 3 years.
So I'm going to scar you both here because with something else. So a lot of input.
No, you're gonna say it.
A lot of inputs coming in from Avon Avengers. All right, and Avon has said that an idea of yours, Eric, was to create more retail publications, and Avon also wants to know from Steven, when am I getting my Kukri cert from Tristor?
Oh my God, you can go to hell.
I knew that was going to happen.
God, I knew.
I almost grabbed the phrase.
Just come on, we want to have a little fun here. So, yeah.
I don't understand my part of that question though.
Retail, because that was a retail publication. It was only one, correct? It was really
what
for
was
living.
A retail publication.
It was for sale generally, wasn't it?
No, you had to subscribe to it. Yeah.
You had to subscribe. Okay. My bad.
I wouldn't have let 24-year-old me launch a consumer product, marketing company material.
Okay.
That's something we need to point out. We were all babies. Like, I'm 48 now. I know you guys are in similar age ranges. And
I'm
Living
32.
Greyhawk
I don't know what you're talking about.
22 years ago. And,
Yeah, but
It was also
sorry, go
a lot of us graduating from online fandom into the campaign company for the first time. That had never happened before, and so that had a huge impact on things going forward. I mean, Living Greyhawk, one of the first Triad members was Mike Merles, who was running D&D, 6 years later or whatever. So it was a very interesting time period.
Well, I mean, and so after, just to show you, that as well is after Erik went up to periodicals and I was buried under work, I'm like, I need at least a little bit of help. And they ended up letting me hire Chris Lindsay, who's a producer at WotC to this day.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's its own show where we talk about
the hierarchy.
Living Greyhawk alumni and what they've gone on to do in the gaming community. Like, seriously, we need to have. We keep talking about this.
That's a very.
Can you imagine the two of you, Merles, Lindsay, and whoever else on here? It would be Chris
Tulloch, Bullman, Jason Bullman,
right?
Yeah,
obviously
James Jacobs.
James Jacobs, not so much actually.
No,
but Ron Lundeen, who worked for Paizo and just got hired.
Ron Lundeen, Sean Merwin.
Even that, just like the entry year, couple of years of
awesome.
Triad people are
Casey's
pretty
next
good
project.
Hit. We really recruited pretty well there, I think, actually.
Because all the names are so well known now at this point.
That's my second and next project.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We need to do that show. I just need you guys we need to pick a time that works for everyone. Maybe that's a better Sunday topic as well than a Wednesday night.
Days before, and I'll be happy to join in.
And to answer the other part of the question, you were never, ever getting your kukri.
There you go, Ivan. So what region was Mike Merles?
Broken in 3rd edition anyway.
What region was Mike Merles in charge as of a Triad, Avon asked?
I don't know. Let me look at the list of them in the back.
They're in the back of the book.
Yeah. And what Erik looks, I must say,
David Christ, who runs our.
David Christ.
Now. He was one.
Oh my gosh. What about Conrad Brindamore? No, was he? No, he just was part of LG.
I think he was more Living City.
He was more Living City. Okay.
I think so, but I'm not positive.
Yep.
Like I said, it's 22 years ago. I'm trying to I think Merle's in New York or Boston.
He was in
New York or Massachusetts.
Okay.
I don't think he was Bissell. I think he was Keelan.
Was he Keelan too?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And this only lists the lead Triad contact POC or whatever.
And number one.
Wasn't that, but he was definitely in the inaugural class.
So let's start this off. Why 0 for Living Greyhawk Journal? Why an issue
because it was a promotional insert in Dragon magazine.
Okay.
And I love comics, and that seemed like something they would have done, is make it an issue 0. It would be lame if the first issue was something that you could only get as a promotional item in another magazine.
So in this, we have an article by you and Gary. Wheels Within Wheels, Greyhawk Circle of 8. Very cool. Yeah. And they're alive here, too. They're not dead, just like in every other adventure that happens.
I mean, this thing, Gary Holian and I spent probably 5 days together in hours on the phone just trying to figure all this shit out. Like, who are these people? How do we weave together these 18 different resources? Who the hell is Warnus Starcoat? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
Just trying to figure it out. This hadn't been figured out yet, largely. And I made it one of my major, it was like, who are the gods imprisoned by Ayuz in Castle Greyhawk, and who the hell are in the Circle of 8? That was kind of the big question marks of the day. And so Gary and I
wait, so I'm going to go right to this. So you planted the seed for who was going to be in expeditions here on the gods that were going to be in the God Trap. Is that correct, what I just heard?
We were trying to figure it out. Because it was was 8 demigods or whatever. So then it was like, well, let's take a really literal, who are the demigods? Well, it must have been Zuokin and all these others.
Okay.
And then a couple of years later, Gary Gygax came online. I was like, well, it was Hextor and Hyrule. And we're just like, all right.
And then
just trying to like pick at the hem of Gary's coat and like taking everything he says as literal gospel. And then you see like what Castle
You
Greyhawk
can't
notebook looked like.
too
And it's
much.
like, I don't know, maybe in this room there's a monster. And it's just like, oh, fuck. We've been trying to build a world that doesn't really exist, which was a pretty interesting thing to kind of grok.
I mean, yeah, where is Stoink? Where,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The manuscript or the city?
the manuscript.
That was probably on that top 10 list of like mysteries we've got to figure out. And that one still to this day, a couple pieces have come out, but no one's ever really found that whole manuscript to my knowledge.
Jay, Eric's article on the trapped gods is a big thing on Cannon Fire, right? It's one of the early big articles I think that you gave to Gary, or maybe it was on the AOL and somehow ended up on Cannon Fire. But we would be remiss if we did not mention Gary's site, Cannon Fire, while talking about Erik.
I'll shout it out.
Everyone trying to solve these mysteries, because we had no Zavoda index, right? 20-something years ago, Jason probably, the Zavoda index was a glimmer in his eye.
Well, there was the Iquandex before the Zavoda index. It was like a much smaller thing. So we were dealing with primitive tools back then.
Yep. But I must say that and now I go back to me just being a fan sitting in Sweden trying to work on my map for my campaign and not much more. But when Living Greyhawk came out and the journal came out, to me it was a wonderful kind of symbiosis of Old Dragon, and because a lot of the format is Old Dragon, you have these little notes coming up what's happened in the world, and then you have some heavy lore, and then with some game mechanics and stuff in. So I love how it was tied into that, and then focused on the setting, so to speak, and background stories and stuff that was and tied together in a lot of the wonderful fashion of Old Dragon magazines, but concentrating on Greyhawk. So for me it was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And one of the other things we talked about RPGA, it was an impossibility to become a member. I think I sent 3 of these, whatever they were called, money orders or something, or the mail from Sweden, and none of them came back and it didn't work. So it was like almost an impossible task to become an RPG member if you didn't live in the US, so or maybe Canada, and so I gave up. I knew there were some people that it did in Sweden, but I was also busy with my work, so I just enjoyed the journal and stuff. But it was amazing when it started coming out, because it focused on things so much, and just like you said, it really went down into the meat of things, and to me it was wonderful, both the content but also the production values, meaning the format, the art, the layout and stuff was, to me, amazing. It was really a kind of a going up several notches. Yeah.
Real quick, Eric, Gent says, Gent says hello.
Hi.
One of the big joys is when Robert Rapier would come down with art from whatever the magazines were, because he'd be so giddy about it, because he got this artist or that artist and everything else, and it was all just really mind-blowing. The other thing that I distinctly remember about the few Living Greyhawk journals that I actually worked on was the balancing act, right? The balancing act of what was written, what we had, what's this triad going to think about this? What is R&D going to think about this? The Rules Council. Do you remember the short-lived Rules Council where all the
every company has one of those for the first couple of years of an edition.
And it's all like, it's Steven and Eric, we're going to need to see every bit of mechanics for the Rules Council. And then we'd send it and it would just disappear. And I think 9 times out of 10, we just published it anyway.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the things that ended up happening, and I was thinking about this with number 0, is we just didn't put mechanics in for a lot of it, which was like, okay, so if it's going to be a big hassle, here's a whole history article. I hope you like it. And the game had kind of been moving the other direction. In fact, the reason this article never got into Dragon proper was that Dave Gross, the editor, was like, hey, it's really cool, but it needs more mechanics. It needs spells from these wizards and stuff. And Gary and I at the time were like, you're rebuilding the rules. We don't know how to make, you don't know how to make spells yet. How are we supposed to know? And so we just did it as history. And that, I think, kind of carried through a little bit in the LGJ as well.
So
he just wanted you to update Greyhawk Adventures to 3rd edition before 3rd edition was finalized.
Well, he just, and it's funny because now if I got this article as a Paizo publisher, I'd be like, put some spells in it. People want to be able to use the material as well as read it. So I've kind of come a little bit full circle on that.
When
So-
you look at the game crunch in these issues, you'll notice that there's an evolution of how the hell do we present these third edition stat blocks that no one knows how to interpret. And you'll notice in the early issues, the monsters have the skills that'll say like, skill +4, dex +2, and whatever bonus +1. Whereas in later, it'll just say skill +7, skill +10. They're showing the players and GMs, how did we arrive at what this monster can do for perception or jump or spot or listen or whatever.
And one of the interesting things about that is, as Skip Williams was the main lead on the Monster Manual, and he had notes on how he built these things, but he hadn't created the monster builder yet. It would eventually be the kind of the scheme for the monster builder. That's one of the reasons why Erik had Sean do these things, because he just had a lot more knowledge of that, right? And we could go to Sean and say, so how did you do that? And he's like, don't bother me, I'm just trying to get it done. And so we'd go through it and we'd be all like, well, Sean did it, I hope it's right. And it was before all of that sort of solidified. Yep. And then and then the Monster Manual came out, and you'd have to change formats.
Same with the LGG, where all of the rules sections of that book, which are minuscule when it has to do with the gods, Sean Reynolds did all those because he was on the design team. So while Stephen and I were trying to figure out how to do magazines, he was in meetings about how to do stat blocks and things, and we knew that he could just come in and he already knew that material that we were still learning. So he was a really important component to bringing that kind of mechanical aspect to a game that was still very much being built brick by brick right in front of the front edge of our shoe as we were going forward.
Okay, Erik, you say you know about this. Is this the first picture of Ming the Merciless Mordenkainen that you know of? Bald?
No,
it's not.
No,
okay.
So I can tell that story. One of the really, really, really cool things about working at Wizards of the Coast in the era that I did, in ultimately where the RPG ended up sitting about 6 months after I started, and where Stephen came in and sat, is we were quite close to a kind of hidden back room area that at the time was called Siberia. And Siberia is where all of the in-house artists and cartographers worked. So for example, the interior art that we're looking at right now, that was done by Sam Wood. He was one of the guys who was on staff as an artist. A lot of the maps and things in Polyhedron and in, I think some of even the scenarios were done by Todd Gamble, who was a artist and cartographer who just worked at the company. Rob Lazzaretti, another guy who was fundamental to the success of Pathfinder a few years later, he was there as well. And he would take me aside and be like, oh, do you want to see the original transparencies of the Darlene map? And I'm like, do I? So they had some treasures back there. And, one of the weird things about Wizards at the time too is like, there was a lot of guys left still from TSR. Some of them were just clearly burnt out beyond recognition. They didn't play D&D. They didn't really have the spark anymore, and I fed off that spark and needed that spark, and those guys in Siberia had that spark, and you could go in and you could just watch them create. So I remember going in, and one of the people I really liked talking to in there was Todd Lockwood, who is really a very interesting guy, has a great perspective on stuff, and I just was like just manifestly talented, just unbelievable to watch these canvases come alive. And a talker too, and he was, and so you would just stand and just hang out, and he would just be painting away. And I remember one of the very first covers I ever saw him illustrate was for this product called TSR Jam, which was I believe the idea behind that was like that the designers could just kind of do whatever they wanted, and a part of my brain says that they took the profits for that and like had some party. I don't know. There was some. It was just some kind of like fun project that, and so it was a lot of short adventures that kind of I think were pitched by the staff, and they were trying to do like one little short adventure for all of the campaign settings that they were supporting at the time. So there was a Ravenloft adventure. I think there was an Alternity adventure. There's like a sci-fi character on the cover of that book. There's a Planescape character, and they had a Greyhawk character, and so they said, well, what do we want to put it for Greyhawk? And the idea was Mordenkainen. And I think if you look closely at the pose and the outfit there. It was inspired by Clyde Caldwell's Mordenkainen's fantastic adventure painting. But I said, hey, Todd, did you know Mordenkainen's not bald? And basically he was just like, yeah, he had like a stupid page boy haircut. I thought that was bullshit, so I made him bald. And he also made him look like his buddy Fred Fields, who was another artist in that pit. I think he had left right before I got hired or something. But so the bald Mordenkainen looks like the artist Fred Fields, who was the model that Todd Lockwood did for the cover of TSR Jam, and he just decided Mordenkainen's haircut was stupid and looked like something from the 70s, so he made him what he thought was a more up-to-date and and I think in retrospect a fairly iconic take on the character, even if it's not the the bona fide OG version.
He doesn't look like Doctor Strange anymore.
Well, and he looks like his own. He looks like his own thing,
Right,
and it
right.
kind of took
Yeah,
on a
I
life
think
of
it
his
was-
own. And that's because I think Todd Lockwood is such a brilliant and talented artist.
The
But it
jam
also
made it bald,
is a
okay.
testament to how little creative direction there really was going on in communication between the companies, because this is arguably the #1 poster child character for the campaign setting, and it was in the hands of an artist doing a cover of a one-off, let's put together some non-memorable adventures for just like a lark, and that was like definitively changing the look of the character. But that was how it worked in the day.
I learned very early in my Wizards days to go take my smoke break by Siberia, because I would I just hear the best stuff.
Because this is the picture from Expeditions that it is evolved into. So the last publication you guys did, Eric. So yep.
Yeah, what a badass.
Yeah.
I love the cover of that book too, which
That cover's awesome too. Yeah, absolutely.
Mo Phillips hair on Mordenkainen.
So that all right. Well, we have the story now, everyone. That's great to hear. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah.
When we have a more casual show, we can dive back into Morty's stat block here, Wizard 20 plus, whereas all the others have their specified levels, and look at power creep, compare them to earlier editions. Because if you look at their stats, they're out of control by, say, now 5e standards or AD&D standards. He's got an int 23 and somebody else has an int 24, if I remember correctly. So to me, as someone who looked at the Bone Hearts and I used the evil and then converted them to 3rd edition, I'd like to kind of look at Morty's history throughout the game and the editions and whatnot. But that would be a topic for another show.
Yeah.
I mean, basically the upshot is it's Gary Gygax's character, and he was going to be the most powerful character, and screw you.
Just like
Keep
Elminster,
going,
is for Ed.
I mean, it is what it is. And there were no rules. That's another thing. There were no rules for higher than 20th level characters at the first couple of years of D&D and 3rd edition. And so, speaking of having the rules being developed as you went, I got hired. This is a total aside, but I got hired to write a significant portion of the Forgotten Realms, Faiths and Pantheons book. And it's it's work for hire, so you do what they tell you to do. But the person who was ultimately in charge was like, the really important thing is that we have full stat blocks for all the gods. And we're like, what the hell are you talking about? No one fights gods since like 1984, and it's just such a waste. At most, you're going to need one of these, and more importantly, there's no rules for it yet. So they were writing the deities and demigods rules at the same time Eric Boyd and I were crunching literal 60th level characters with no rules for those characters. And so we would do things like we had so many skill points, there were no more skills in the game to dedicate them to. Like we ran out of it was just ridiculous. And ultimately, of course, the deities and demigods rules iteration changed 5 or 6 times during the course of our turnovers. So I ended up wasting months of my time doing 60th level stat blocks that never saw the light of day, and that was just a huge, and I knew going in, but they paid really well, so who cares ultimately, but just sucked.
Side question to that, Eric, did that experience in any way, shape, or form affect Mythic thought rules? Because Mythic was Pathfinder, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because it's
course.
like, look at how hard it is to do a
That's why
sliver
I'm
of the
here.
game no one plays. Can we come up with some of these themes in a way that maps over the part of the game that does play? That was the only way. Then it kind of, Stephen probably knows more about that, from that point forward. But yeah, of course it did. And it also, another thing that happened is very shortly after Paizo started on James Jacobs's first day, I gave him the an article about Rary, and I'm like, do the stat block, dude. I'm burned out on big stat blocks, and I've hated stat blocks pretty much since. That was a traumatic experience.
Yeah, I think you even put that in the forward into Mythic Adventures when yeah, that was kind of that, because I love that approach compared to Epic was kind of cool, but Mythic was kind of more interesting. And I made in beginners tiers that was and divine tiers that was kind of copy from that. So
yeah, I think you could use that as a good template for doing some sort of divine ranks. They called them third edition, right? 0, 1, 2, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So I pulled this down. This is the last of the page of the insert, and I wanted to see how many names I knew. Valuna, David Christ, right? We got Jason Bullman, High Folk.
Yep. Tulak was in there too. He ran
he
RPG
was
for several years.
And you had articles from Nicholas Tulak, Chris's brother. And Nick, I think, was also maybe an admin or triad on his own. Maybe, I forget.
Very cool.
Yeah, I like Nick a lot. He's a good. I like both of the Tulaks. They're both great guys.
Well, we need to get Chris on for sure.
Absolutely.
Good luck with that. Well, he's a new dad,
right?
Newish dad. So I know he's got that busyness going for him, and yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you get after a while you get a little gun shy about talking about old times, mostly when you have to remember back 22 years. Like when you guys contacted me, I'm like, oh crap, what do I remember from that time period?
It comes
as it turns out a lot.
Basically sat with Beth, and she's like, yeah, she's like, you remember a lot. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do. The trauma helps cement it.
Yeah.
For the audience, Stephen joined us November 19th of 2020 for Legends and Lore number 75.
Yes, and we're on 163 now. So hey, time flies when you're having fun just everywhere. So
and that's on YouTube. If you go to Jay's YouTube channel,
I'll link
find that and rewatch it. It was Greg Marks and David Christ discussing the early days of living Greyhawk. It was a great show.
Yeah, that was a fun memory lane. Although it's really funny to me as a strange aside on something that Erik said is that Todd Lockwood was criticizing Morty's haircut when he basically had the same haircut at the time.
I'm not going to comment on that.
But it stuck. It stuck, which is the amazing thing that happened. And hey, and now we know where we are today with it. And hey, so be it, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you don't have to have him bald in your campaign. It's that simple.
There's more official pictures of bald Morning Kanan than there ever was with the Page Boy haircut.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yep.
So, first publication, Living Greyhawk Journal 1. This really
wonderful Brom cover.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, check out. Hold on a second.
Oh, here it comes.
I set Erik up
in motion.
I know he's got it.
That's awesome. He's got the original.
Because I remember the day he was like,
"Oh, look at that! Wow, the original artwork.
There you go.
The original freaking artwork
by Brom.
Wow.
Number 1. The reason that the guy is holding his finger up is because it's the first issue.
That's cool.
And I bought it. Yay!
It's a wonderful piece.
Yep.
Absolutely. What was the date on this?
It was September 2000.
September 2000.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So,
because I remember seeing the galleys. That was one of the first things I saw when I started working.
Gary goes to town on this, and it is the Gary Julian. I know he just went AFK. Probably do something with his family. This is the Bible for adventuring today in Keeland, everyone. Okay, out of Living Greyhawk Journal number 1. Did that article make it to a Dragon post afterwards, or has it always come from here? It's always come from here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it starts off campaign news. David Tip Vaught mans the character creation station. Okay. I don't know him.
So the interesting thing.
He left after about the first year. He had it's an interesting story, but probably not. No, he
there's
just
a
had some
little-
health reasons he had to
Oh,
depart.
okay.
There's a little nugget in there, Stephen and Eric, about how the tables were run at Gen Con. 7 players. You guys specifically mentioned in here
God help
DM
us.
plus 7 players. And during Living Greyhawk, it was a maximum of 6 players.
You
Just
can
to me,
imagine
that was-
why.
Yeah. Because
I think
I
what
run
we
a home
had
campaign with 8 players, and it's bonkers.
It's terrible.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that the idea was that 6 was the maximum unless you couldn't seat somebody, so then we would ask, like, if with the GM's permission, would you be okay running 7? And my gut tells me the year we debuted 3rd edition and launched a new campaign, there were a lot of 7-player tables at Gen Con.
Yeah, like I said, I had multiple tickets for, or I had tickets for all of the Living Greyhawk events, because I wanted to go check it out.
You're chopped.
All of my friends weren't able to them, and that's why I gave them to them, because it was very popular.
It was insane. The launch
Yeah.
for 3rd edition was nuts.
If I had a
This
target
article, by
system,
the
I
way,
would-
the one right before the Keeland article, this Places of Mystery by me, which talks about the belching vortex of Luke. Oh,
There it is. Yeah.
genius. That was originally, this was one of the chapters that was going to be in that Roger Moore version of the, it was my contribution to the Places of Mystery chapter, and I think Steve Wilson wrote a few that we didn't publish here. I can't remember if we ever got to them, but when someone said, wasn't this just an overflow for the Living Greyhawk?
That was Gary. It was
This
Gary.
article for sure was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
What's
what-
the canon on Dark Ash and Nom? Because my buddy Britt and Divers, Joe Selby of Divers, they just went in a completely different direction with Dark Ash and Nom and Molaho Kim. We made him a demigod in the Bandit Kingdom.
I honestly don't really remember. I think it would, I think obviously the Bottle City of Kandor was an inspiration from Superman, but beyond that, I don't really remember. I haven't read it in 20 years, so
It's
maybe
okay.
in a quiet moment, I'll refamiliarize myself with my own beautiful prose. Oh God, how did I write that?
So I want to ask this because I know someone mentioned this in chat. Our first contest lets you be any type of character you wish. Well, you know what? I'm not. You know what? See, I'm being stupid here. I don't have it up on here. Yeah, right here.
Okay.
It says the first issue of magazine dedicated to our newest, most ambitious campaign. So it says here, create your own Living Girl character. Character creation rules on the following page give you a good set of guidelines, but they don't allow for the really, really crazy, really special stuff. Write a letter of up to 500 words telling us the circle of 6, one special thing you'd like for your character. Huh? Man, that must have driven you crazy.
I have no memory of
No, really? Okay.
whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think we I remember, well, Trister, of course, because that's just burnt into my memory. But I don't think we ever got anything.
I think
Really?
we did actually.
You
I
did,
do
because it's in
remember.
the 4th issue. You
Does it
guys
talk-
announced the winners in number
Okay,
4.
well, there
All right,
you
we'll
go.
get there
Oh,
then.
maybe
All right,
Remember,
cool.
I'm starting to piece together that there were people who
That's
had,
the troglodyte PC
Oh,
Ah,
and
look at
things
that.
like that. So when we get to 4, we'll be
Yeah,
able to
okay,
answer
great.
that question.
Awesome. I just saw it. I was like, wow, that's cool.
it's
Hey.
shocking what you forget over the course of 20 years.
It's perfectly understandable, Eric. I mean, you got so much. Everyone has so much going on. All right, so illustration by Michael Dubish. That's
Yeah.
cool. I like this. Tarrigan Melix's Secret of Passage. Interesting.
Yeah, Mantardigan Melix, I can tell a story about that actually. I think it's pretty clear if you read it, but let me see if I can find. So the secret of passage, you'll note that what that is, that's one of the gray key cards from Expedition to the Barrier Peak.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
In
Okay.
fact, Manmardigan Melix, or whatever the hell his name is, his golem is the boxing robot from Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. You can see under the hood he's still wearing the same
You're going to
headgear.
give Gary Julian a stroke talking about Expedition.
Gary Holian knew all of that.
But he hates it. He hates Expedition to Barrier
Yeah,
Peaks.
I'm sorry, Gary. I haven't read that yet, so sorry.
Ah, that's awesome. That is really cool. Stephen, what are your memories of the first like 0 and 1? I mean, something like wow, when this got rolling here. I know how this Keeland article is so huge till this day. I mean, we talk about it all the time. But what you got any memories in these early days here of the journal?
So it's
Oh, you're chopping real bad. We
Yep.
lost you.
not.
Yeah,
Oh no,
we're
you
losing you,
need an
Steve.
Ethernet cable stat.
Oh, you use Wi-Fi maybe. Yeah.
Yes, Stephen, we're losing you like every third word.
Well,
Try
I'm
it.
not talking right now.
No, there you go. There you go. Okay.
So the interesting thing is, by the time I came on, 0 and 1 were a done deal. I saw 1 in
Okay.
galleys. Eric, of course, was very excited.
Okay.
I liked what I saw, but it wasn't until number 2. Basically, I worked on number 2, 3, and 4.
All right, we'll get there.
And then by 5, I have a big thing that's like, I'm in charge of the campaign now. Bye.
5 was a weird one too, because it lingered a long time for
It did.
a variety of reasons, and so it was kind of in a bottle until we finally put it out as a little bit of a last hurrah.
Then we
I have an interesting story about the Zvart.
Oh, please, yeah, let's do it. Son of Caius.
I think it was the first time I ever got summoned to Bill Slavisek's office for a little talking to.
Hey, Bash.
It wasn't the only time. The other time had to do with the Fright of Twister. But the word Zvart, or SVART, you sometimes see like Svart Elfar, meaning black elf. That means black in Swedish or something like that. Anna, you know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
And
it's spelled with an S, not an X. But
right,
it's pronounced
I
the
understand,
same
but
way.
pronounced
Yeah.
the same. And so
Yeah,
there
Svart.
was at that point a little bit of concern that maybe the Zvart creature itself was was racist, was meant to be a parody of black people or something. And I'm like, I don't think they're little blue guys. I don't really think that's the case. And it was like, don't you think we should publish it? And I was like, no. And then he let me go and
spell it
publish
using X. That takes it away, I think. So it's good.
But what I mean, it
Yeah.
was just an interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
the good news is it showed that some of the sort of those cultural sensitivities were coming in even as early
they're
as
evil Smurfs,
1999. But little old me at the time was like, but it's canon. You gotta come on, guys, some shit, And so we did it. But I think that maybe. Anyway, interesting story. I got a little talk.
Did not know about that.
Did you do those stats, Eric, for this?
Did I do the stats? No, Sean Reynolds did all the monsters.
Oh, he did?
The whole time, yeah. He did a great job with them.
Did this one get done early on because of River of Blood?
Probably yeah, I mean, obviously then one of the main launch adventures was Zvart oriented, speaking of things that probably wouldn't fly in 2022. Yeah, so that was part of it. That wasn't why I got the talking to, though. Ironically, it was just the idea behind it. So
I was a little bit surprised when you said that, but we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So
Zvarts.
There's a nice one on the Spotrix of Heartbeat by Fred Wining here, which is cool.
Yeah.
You had this dispatches section, which is kind of like the events in the Flaness that Gary Gygax did in the Dragon magazine, which is kind of cool.
And these were all submitted by the regional triads. So these all represented things that were happening for real in the campaign in those areas. So the idea was that the local players could go and see. That's one of the feedback mechanisms whereby their actions could impact the world, was this section. As it turned out, people were really, 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 really bad at hitting deadlines with these kind of things.
No.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
It was a nightmare. It was always the biggest nightmare, actually.
Hey, Jay, scroll up to the BK one.
Did you do? Okay, Bandit Kingdoms.
No, this precedes me by a year or two. But the reports from passing travelers, blah, blah, blah. If you read this now, you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I wonder where I could learn more. $9.95 on Amazon.
He did it! Woo!
I'd like to draw some attention to the map in the back of Keeland, which I actually really, really like.
Yeah,
that was done by Sean Glenn, who was in one of the art directors in the periodicals and marketing part of WotC, and then he was actually one of the first art directors at Pathfinder. So the Pathfinder logo was created by Sean Glenn, the artist who did this map.
And
It's
also,
a great map.
Anna used this,
Yeah.
incorporated all this into her
Oh,
map
yeah,
to
that
this
was-
day.
yeah,
from
it's
there.
one of
One
the
of
best.
the most knowledgeable graphic designers in this business.
Yeah,
when
it's
it
really
comes to
nice.
fonts and everything.
And it goes hand in hand with Gary's article, which is so detailed on Keelan.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yep.
it's a fantastic reference point to this day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing my Seton article for the Earth Journal this year. I was deep
Yeah,
diving
through
into
Seton.
this
Yep,
this
absolutely.
Keeland article
Yep.
that Gary wrote 20-something years ago.
Notice Salt Marsh is not on this map.
It's not.
Exactly.
Seton
It's
is.
probably too small. It's mentioned in the article.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Vale
Yeah.
Keep is, but Seton is not. But yeah, so very, very cool on number 1. But now we're going to get into some Steven era stuff. Of course, this is my favorite one of all of them because of one thing only. I get to update my map to this unbelievably wonderful map of Greyhawk that I did a search for 4 years and finally got it. I made a trade with someone and got this, which I'm so happy about it. It's just it's so wonderful. So much, Malden did his job on this. I mean, did you gentlemen both assist him with this, or did he come to you goes, it's done, and then I just need?
I think it was mostly him, honestly,
Yeah.
although he and Gary and I and others collaborated on this kind of thing constantly. So
What a beautiful
I wrote
map.
a lot of the articles that with him that detailed it. But when it came to the map, I mean, Malden was just driven to fix that map and to
I will,
make
Amy.
it look like a city that actually could handle the quoted population and stuff. So a lot of it was just like get out of Dennis's way and just let him create, as I recall.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of great discussions on the locations of the ad here. So here we go. So special insert Greyhawk poster map, Dennis Tetro, Gem of the Flanish by Dennis and Erik. The Artisans Quarter is detailed in here, which is great because that one's the least detailed. That in the slum section, at least detailed in the original box set. I know, Erik, you were watching when we had Rick Rose on. Wasn't that an awesome discussion when Rick came on?
Oh my God!
Malden
I was
got
nowhere
him
watching.
on.
I was on the panel with you guys.
Yeah,
and it
yeah. Oh,
was
that's
great.
right. You did hop on. Yeah, that's right.
I was
Yeah.
such a nerd boy. Like a
Yeah,
fanboy.
wow.
I was like,
That was-
"Oh,
That
tell
was
me more of Carl Sargent, please."
Yep.
that was so fantastic. So, assistant editor Erik Mona, Stephen Radney-MacFarland, assistant editor. Let me blow this one up a little bit more here. So we're in November. So this one comes right out after the September one. You guys are rolling here early
Yeah.
on these. So very cool. So Stephen, lots of great information in this one. What was your highlights here?
The highlight for me, like most of what I did in this work was basically go through copy editing pass. Most of it was pretty much done. But as I started to work on this issue, I was really interested in, I started getting very interested in the mechanics. I was like, the mechanics were very puzzling in some ways and very straightforward in others. And so I remember talking to a lot of people in R&D.
Oh, you just zapped there, Stephen.
The-
You completely zapped. Lost you for about 5 seconds.
the Rieni, and
Yeah, we're losing you. You may want to log out of Zoom and back in if you to fix it because we're not getting you at all now.
hold on just
Yep, no problem. So Valmoku says that this one, Living Greyhawk Journal 2 with the map is 110 now on Noble Knight. That's cheap, I think.
I think I have a case of them. Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Erik.
Oh, you have a case.
You're sitting on a gold mine, Erik. Yeah, you're sitting
Please
on
tell me Fright at Chister's worth something. I got like 20
about $3. No, that
Okay.
one's worth about $35, I think.
with kukri cert. It's worth 50.
And then the price goes up, probably 50 or something. Yep.
Hey Beth, it's okay, and thank you for coming on, Beth. Really good to see you too. I know Steven's working. You okay, Steven? You back?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So if
Yep,
you want to
perfect.
finish that thought there, that would be. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so the Way of the Lake was kind of the big deep dive for me, because learning the rules, and especially we've got a couple of prestige classes in there and everything else, and so it was a lot of me going to Skip Williams and other people like, is this right? like, and how does this work? And them giving me like, yeah, well, that's sort of right, and blah 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 blah. And so that was my first sort of deep dive into the mechanics of the system, just to make sure that things were right enough, at least for us to publish this thing, and it could be absolutely playable. Loved everything else I was reading in it. I really enjoyed the monsters in this one and whatnot, but it was so down the process that basically it taught me a lot about the mechanics and a lot about the process that we were working under in the RPGA at the time.
I don't want to sound ignorant. Do I know Lance Halvermail?
He wrote a lot of Dragon magazine articles.
Okay.
So,
Very cool. Because
And this is the first prestige class you've got going on now.
I mean, probably pretty early in the history of prestige classes even existing. Quite frankly.
Right, just probably Dungeon Master's Guide with the base ones, and then maybe a Splat book. I'm not even sure Splat book has been out.
Thank you, Keith. The first one.
Yeah.
And that must have come out pretty much around this time. So I'm glad we just remembered to put an attack progression bonus in our charts, unlike everyone in that book.
How do you pronounce that? Dark Hagar, Dark Haggard? How do you anyone know the pronunciation? Because I butcher everything for this prestige class.
In my head, the weapon is the Darka.
Darka Guard.
So I call it the Darka Guard.
Darka Guard. Okay.
That's a great
Team
name.
America, Darka.
This is well before Team America, sadly.
Right,
but,
right.
Well,
I don't know. Team America's pretty old at this point.
Yeah.
Is it?
It might be close. We're getting old. But you have the Darka
Team
Guard
America
and you have the
after
Vesta.
9/11, and this is still a year ahead of 9/11.
Yeah.
Is it?
It is.
2000? Yeah.
I mean, come on, never forget. But there's a piece in here that I think is really interesting that I noticed, and I'd love to get Stephen's thoughts on this, because I think you were present for this, Stephen. But I'm looking at this campaign news on page 2, second column. It says,
oh no.
Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil by Monty Cook revisits the site of classic adventures such, and I know this is Jay's favorite adventure, so that's another reason for that. The site of classic adventures such as Village of Hamlet, Temple of Elemental, even more. At this year's Winter Fantasy, January 25 to 28, Living Greyhawk players will get an exclusive first glimpse at a portion of this new mega adventure and a special event designed for characters of level 1 to 5. Registration for this 4-hour event is on site only. Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil will run twice during the convention at 9 a.m. on both Saturday and Sunday. As a special benefit, some members will get a chance to play the game with guests of honor Monty Cook, author, and Andy Collins, editor. And then I said, in totally unrelated news, the restorative services of Hamlet's Temple of St. Cuthbert will be available on site for a small fee on the off chance some characters don't survive the experience.
Look at the back cover.
Temple of Elemental Evil preview event was one of the most exciting and fun RPGA events I ever saw. They came in like with the parade. I think Bowman was involved. A lot of the key Triad members were there. Monty was there. Andy was there, and they came in with the procession. They're banging a drum, and then all the GMs went to their various tables. And I mean, it was like a killing field in that room. Like, we intentionally made it a little difficult. There were characters dropping like flies, and it was awesome.
Well, the adventure itself made it difficult, and I think like it's got a blue dragon.
Yeah. Oh hell, it sure does.
In the beginning, and then I remember that show because I met David Chris that show. I met Chris Tulloch that show. I met Jason Bowman that show, and I was mostly on the cert table, which people could buy certs or get potions or whatever. And so I met a lot of people that show, saw a lot of very happy faces, a lot of sad faces as the characters died. But yeah, it was a really, really fun event, and it taught me a lot about how to make really fantastic fun events to build up the hype and everything else, which you really kind of didn't see in the early days of convention play, wherever you went. And so, yeah, a huge learning experience. Not only the fact that, it's not even the designers sometimes it's like, really? You put a blue dragon there? And I have and this might be wrong, but I think we stopped running the blue dragon just because it was so heartbreaking.
Maybe.
I did not know, and I'm going to apologize here up front. I did not know that there was all this pre-hype during Living Greyhawk for that adventure. Okay, so I'll give you guys, cut
Oh,
you guys,
yeah.
cut
I
you
mean,
a
it
little
was
slack,
the-
Eric.
It was one of the biggest things to have. I mean,
Okay.
in retrospect, I'll let you be the judge, but it was certainly one of the most high profile Greyhawk releases in years, and we wanted to be right on top of that. You know, we were really trying to play ball and support third edition and really live out the promise that there is a core setting here and that these players have an opportunity to impact it. And so the idea, I was, I think at this point already in Monty's Monday game, but I started my friendship with him playtesting it, and so I knew a little bit of what was going to be in there, and it was like, oh, we've got to capture some of this, and let's I liked the beginning of that adventure quite a lot, and so I thought that would be a really fun sort of nostalgic way to go, and there's enough twists and turns off of the main thing that people would really dig it, and it was very popular.
It
and
sounds
really,
like a huge, I mean, and it's just a way to get people excited.
yeah,
Taking
it
one of the
worked.
most iconic adventures and doing that, I can understand that
Yeah.
completely. So very, very
We didn't
cool.
get to Vampire Thrommel or any of
I
that.
knew, see, you had to ruin it, Eric. You had to
That's
freaking
awesome.
ruin it.
Well,
Love it.
Oh,
that was Origins,
Zing.
because this was just the Moat House.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
at Origins, we actually did the crater.
Oh, did we? I didn't
dungeon.
remember that. Okay,
oh my
that's-
Well,
God.
because you were already in periodicals, man.
I was already gone. I was just like, have fun, Steven.
Oh my gosh.
That was that was the busiest Origins I think I ever had.
Well, it sounds like these early years, you guys have peaked early, and just the burnout has to take effect sooner or later. Eric, it sounds like you were burnt out on the stat blocks right off. You know, as for example.
Well, no, that still hadn't happened yet. That
No,
was still a couple
okay.
of years off. Yeah.
Okay.
Burnout, I was not anywhere near. I think the amount of energy, and not just me, Steven, everybody else, it's a really invigorating time, and we were all very early in our careers and very, very excited about just the whole world ahead of us. And
Yeah, and even in 2006, when I ended up leaving that position, it wasn't the work. I've always enjoyed the work. It was I had a layer of 3 bosses, and they could never agree on anything, and I was just like, yeah, I'm fucking done with dealing with you guys, right? But I've always enjoyed the work.
You got some great stuff in here. The Bullywug Savant is in here, which is cool. What is this? Griggener? I can't. Grigauer. Okay.
I think that it was honestly, I think that the way that this started is, and Stephen, you might be able to remember. I think we went to Sam Wood and we said, here's 3 canonical Greyhawk monsters we want, and then just draw whatever the hell you want for the other one. And Sean will bring it in. And so that's where like the Noskiri from the previous issue came in.
Okay.
That's where this Grigauer came in. I mean, they weren't necessarily all, greatest hits material, but the idea was let's not just wallow in nostalgia the whole time. Let's create some new stuff as well.
This is the best Valley Elf picture I've ever seen. Drawing right here.
Thanks, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve.
And just like you had the first or early prestige class, you guys have a template. The Animus is a template.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
in
Another
here.
great 3rd edition invention with the
Yeah.
template, just like the prestige class. Yeah.
Yep,
Right, absolutely.
I'm flipping through all of these, and that was definitely what it was here's
Yeah.
3 canonical monsters and draw us something new.
Well, I mean, you had this kind of it was an interesting place because you had old TSR people, and then you had folks like Eric that had grown up with D&D and were very passionate about it, and then you had Wizards of the Coast folks, and who were very keen on like, yeah, go ahead and lean into the nostalgia, but we also have to make this game our own. Sometimes very helpful to kind of push the envelope and get us to move forward of it. Other times, I don't know how many meetings I was in, like, Steven, let's make a PvP Dungeons and Dragons organized play system. And I'm just like, you have Magic. You don't need another one.
Okay.
And let's just keep D&D as D&D. Please.
Yeah, player versus player would have been bad.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It would have been really.
Just gamers devolve once you go to player versus player.
Yep. So some great work here by a lot of wonderful people. Unbelievable in this art. I mean, you got everyone you can think of in this article. Just the whole thing is fantastic. And I'm not telling. And everyone's like, we got people out there. Where can I get this? Well, Noble Knight has that one for $110, right? One of these. Or Eric Mona has a box of them. So you can
come break into my
But
email
I think you can,
polyhedron@wizards.com.
yeah,
right.
go ahead,
I
Eric.
think you can get some, if not all of them, through GM's Guild.
I think
PDF.
so,
Still,
too.
Yeah.
the DM's Guild.
PDFs, they're available.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, great! The PDFs are available on DM's Guild.
Yep.
There you go.
Steven and
Yep.
I are making a killing on the royalties.
So,
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 of them in print and the rest in PDF. that I've
Very
got.
cool.
So, yep. So you can
Yeah, I only
find
have that. I
PDF.
only have that one in print.
But
That's
I
the
have
only
to
one I
say
have.
that the PDF of that one, it doesn't include the poster map in PDF, if I remember correctly. Only the magazine itself.
oh, that sucks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doing Carthon may link something. I had nothing to do with the link, everyone. That's all I'm going to say. He can take, Rick Miller, he can take responsibility for it. All right. So
I like how you used his full name though, just in case. That was really classy, Jay.
Yeah, but Rick's done a lot of great work lately, and in particular his Value of the Mage stuff. Where he knows we are all joking around. He may not do that. So Avon once again said that they had a huge thing going on in the UK, and they had live actors there in the RPG and GA, and no one showed up. The Allwall Dispatch is a summary of the Gen Con UK launch event. They had medieval reenactors perform the tourney, but forgot to tell the players. That's one person showed up. What a shame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a shame. Just some wonderful things here on number 2. All right. We'll go to number 3 here. 3.
And immediately we get into where people start calling the campaign living paperwork.
Yeah.
But it was necessary. And I don't know if it's been solved to this day.
Well, yeah, Steven started solving it right away when he took over, as I recall.
Yeah, well, at least try to at the period of time, and it's been an iteration ever since. And quite frankly, I'm still trying to solve it. My new job it involves trying to solve it. As controversial as that is, but yeah, it's all like, hey, we want this ongoing thing, and we have to. I remember when I first started playing Living City, there were no certs. You just wrote it on your character sheet, and then all of a sudden, because people were lying about what was on their character sheet, and so you created certs. And I remember thinking that was utterly ridiculous, because you get a copy machine and a few scribbles, and you could do the same thing. But it did help with the fraud. And then down the line, when I took it off of the cert standard, which was very controversial, that was after a lot of conversations with R&D that were like, and the problem was kind of distribution and creating, we had a bunch of classes, and you couldn't maximize or at least optimize or even stay up with certain classes. And that's when we first created the adventure record, which has through its various iterations has become the standard of organized play today. But when I have somewhere around here, Beth bought me a nice multi-page frame to hold it in, but I have the basically petition to get me fired. My first full year at Wizards of the Coast. No, maybe it was my second, to get me fired from my job because I was doing such a terrible job. I made the thing free, and now we don't have certs anymore, and blah 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 blah. But play also increased exponentially for a number of years, and so my bosses were all like, meh. Steven, we think you're doing a fine job. I'm like, oh, that's good. I guess I'll keep on doing this. But yeah, even in the beginning, because I think when you come into a system from a prior system, you just expect the same things to occur.
Yeah.
And of course, we had different things like, you could travel to different regions. There was a lot more sort of play experiences that were possible. We had to find a way to limit that so people weren't getting 20th level characters in the second year of the campaign and stuff like that. You had to make certain choices. Some of that was already kind of built into the system, but people didn't realize it, or at least didn't get kind of a glimmer of it. And then, other people who had not played an organized play system come in, and it's just like, what do you mean there's all these other rules for tracking and stuff? This isn't the way my GM does it. Yeah. And,
Wow.
and so
That was
trying
after
to
my
find the solutions, trying to find a solution for that, and other aspects of organized play has actually weighed on my mind for a number of years.
That's from year one, the one I just showed to the audience. I'm going to pull out one from year 8. They got prettier, they got more artistic, functionally better, and they carried over well to Pathfinder Society. They're very similar, or at least the last time I played Pathfinder Society, which was a long time ago. They were very similar in design, but you can see they went from kind of stark to, this is 596. We still had 2 years left in the campaign. Color shields and runes, but you can see the information density on this sucker. I probably have everything crossed off because my party sucked and we probably didn't do what we needed to do in that adventure.
Well, technology was increasing all the time too, with printer technology and things like that. So
right, PDFs and printers and emails and whatnot. At 20th level, John Indicarus from Zyfe said that they had a couple PCs. He swears to God they had PCs reach 20th level like early in year 3 or something. And I've done the math, TUs and regionals, core mods, interactives or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way. And then in issue 4, you guys talk about giving out free TUs to some contest winners. So I'm wondering if they were the people that got the extra 3 and then another 5 possibly for 8 extra TUs, and that allowed them to get to 20th level.
That reminded me of something that Avon Avengers just posted in there, which is somewhere around the way we realized that the Greek organized play thing was just doing their own certs and making up just basically just running a parallel campaign, and that was a fun revelation. That's for sure.
Those damn Greeks.
Oh yeah, and the RUPs that someone mentioned,
And I remember having to basically ban a triad member because they were they weren't going through the correct process in order to get theirs. They were basically just printing out adventures and going out, not and like the correct information. Yeah, you're fired, and everybody's like, but we love this guy, and I'm like, sorry, like I work for a company, I've got to protect the company. The guy did something wrong, and I got for years people like, could you reinstate him? I'm like, no, it's a perma ban. And you have to kind of do that in organized play systems.
That gentleman, right? He said like, oh, I didn't get back the stuff from the circle I needed in time for this convention, so he created the adventure records and certs unauthorized, distributed them. If I remember correctly, he's also notorious in another organized play campaign as well, but that's a whole nother.
And so
another barrel.
What? And and down the line, it was kind of like one of the fun tricks that I did is when I ended up hiring the people for the circle, I was all like, everything good comes from you guys. Everything bad comes from me. Always do that. I'm the one who, this is a full-time job. I'm getting paid. I'm in charge of the company. I can always be your fall guy. In some ways, I don't think that helped my mental health for a number of years because I was always the fall guy. But at the same time, when you have when you have basically people who are getting a little bit of compensation for doing a whole lot of work, that's the way it's got to be. And it was definitely the buck stops with me. And so all of the decisions that people were like, well, that's terrible. It's like, well, that's a decision we made, and I can tell you the reasons, and you may or may not accept them. But yeah, I became the bad guy in the campaign, and that was by design because that was my job.
My bad. I'm pretty sure that on the Living Greyhawk Yahoo groups that Mark Middleton ran, that I'm sure I said some stupid shit when I, looking back on it now, it's like, I didn't understand. I wasn't, I didn't know what the hell I was
20
talking
years
about.
ago.
Comes
Hey.
with the job, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can't handle some unfair criticism, get the hell out of the RPG
Well,
business.
I don't need news, but I do talk about some of my thoughts in this book, $9.95 on Amazon.
Oh my gosh. Hey, you know what, Casey? I hope you saw another 1,000. I really do. Stick it to the man. I have a question. What is an adaptable scenario? It says the first two of what will be many adaptable scenarios have hit the scene. Both of them offer more than their share of thrills. An adaptable scenario can be ordered by anyone in the world, but includes information on how to make it local to your Silent Living Greyhawk region. Look for news more on adaptables in the next issue.
I don't know how long that lasted. Steven, do you remember?
It lasted a good amount of time, and adaptable scenarios actually came out of things like regional events and stuff like that. It was basically a way, because when you play an organized play thing, you usually get canned adventures, and people kind of want to run their own storyline. And so, for instance, in the Glimmering right now, the plan is we're going to have what I call the A story, which is the storyline of the Glimmering, but we're also going to have the thing where a GM can basically just run the stories that they wanted to, and that's going to be like the B line of the story. And so it's a way for GMs to participate in the fun of adventure building within that within that thing.
I just talked about the Brendigan incident, and I know Casey taught us about all that time. You guys ripped them back off, didn't you?
The Brendigan selling the magic amulet that had been returned magically to him because it was cursed.
Yeah.
Right? Someone in the audience, Avon Avengers, was talking about how the PCs figured that out and would then sell it to somebody else. And one of our BK colleagues, Susan Threadgill, who passed away last year, she says she made about 20,000 gold pieces at Gen Con one year playing that adventure. And that's when you guys realized what was going on and banned it. That was her story, and she was sticking to it.
So this wasn't ripped off from the name of a bad movie with Joan Chen and Eric, Rucker Hauer or anything. Blood of Heroes.
First of all, that's a good movie. Not.
I love the movie. I love it.
Second of all,
busting.
Yeah, probably. It's an homage.
I love that movie. It's got D'Onofrio in it too, right?
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I was just busting.
It's a better movie than it has any right to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's all Australian, and you can see the same. They use the same extras in every scene, if you notice, and all. Yeah, so
that's where they have the sporting event where they're called juggers. Right?
Juggers, where they try to put the dog skull on a steak.
That's a good movie.
Yeah,
what movie is this?
Blood of Heroes.
It's really good, actually. Stephen, I think you'd like it.
Yeah,
honestly, I do.
All right, good. I will put it on my list.
Joan Chen and Rucker Hauer. Yep.
Okay.
And D'Onofrio. Vincent D'Onofrio's in it too, if you can believe it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So this was I think we discussed this one on Divine Powers. All the lesser we went over this when we did Demigods, if I recall. Is that correct, Anna?
I think so.
Yeah, and some great ones because Darren's in here. This is a great article.
Yeah,
this is really good.
Gary and Fred and I were utterly obsessed with this idea of what's the difference between a hero god and a demigod and a quasi deity, and trying to understand that hierarchy. And since so many of these characters clearly had connections to Gary's original campaign, it just seemed like mining an incredibly rich vein, but a really mysterious one as well. And it ties in. Weren't those all in the glossography of the original box set?
Yeah, some of them were. Yeah,
there was no detail on them.
So as far as I'm concerned, you just can't get more sort of Greyhawk than that 83 box set, and probably just because I'm not old enough to have gotten the 80 folio, but yeah, man, that's where a lot of that came from, is just trying to figure out who's Kellenin and what's the deal with Merlin and all that, and that really developed into this article. I think Fred in particular was. And
you have multiple alignments too. Yeah, you have all the alignments covered, which is great. Which was fantastic for the time. It's just this fills a huge hole in. Well, I know nothing about Darren. All I know is Darren has an instant fortress, you know, and no, seriously. And then this was.
Well,
I
think that's all there was, Jay. I don't even know that there had been prior to this article a connection between Darren and Greyhawk. I can't remember.
Right.
But
a
lot of this was new.
Yeah,
I mean, Azor Elk, that was from like a
the
Pillars.
The Pillars of Azor Elk, yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. It's fantastic. It's I know, and we discussed this, you know, during that when we did demigods, and we did a quasi deity discussion, saints and quasi deities of Greyhawk, and this came up, you know, of all the locations on this. Yeah, we try and be thorough. Oh,
look who's here!
Caius.
Caius,
pre Age of Worms.
Yeah,
started the gears kicking on what became Age of Worms.
That is
article.
Would this have been a gazetteer like cutting room floor, because it's got all three of you as authors?
Only in that we just knew we didn't have space for it, but wanted to get to it and give them the same kind of treatment as the others got. I mean, that God section in the Gazetteer is pretty extensive and a significant portion of the book. And so I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if at the time we wrote the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, there was no real sense of what a quasi-deity or hero deity even was, because that was so early on that it made sense to avoid him there. But I knew we wanted to come back.
Do I have permission to start a group argument?
I'd love it. Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Controversy puts butts in seats on Twitch.
Steven and Eric, Casey has a project going on to eliminate Greyhawk deities.
Called Too Many Gods. I'm taking all the gods which have the same portfolios, and I'm just saying that they are plurality of beings. Yeah. This god is the same god.
You leave Sotilion alone.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric.
I don't know if I've gotten to that.
What have you done with Aquaman?
Yeah. That's wonderful way of pronouncing it. That's
Thank you. I'm sure that's what Len meant.
So given that, give or take, humanity's had about 3,000 gods. I think there's some room.
Exactly. I think Greyhawk should have at least 500. Yeah.
I would be a total hypocrite to push back against this idea, because when Eric Boyd and I worked on Forgotten Realms, Faiths, and Pantheons, I was like, what is the deal with the Forgotten Realms? This thing sucks so bad. There's like 3 gods of knowledge. What the hell? Like, too many gods. In your Polyhedron article where you're like finding more in little throwaway, it's just adding field. It's too much. And so what we actually did in that book, and I don't know to this day if someone has gone in and kind of mapped this out, but we intentionally planted the seeds of destruction of almost every single god in that book. There's various little subtextual things that hint at like, if this ever happens and this ever happens, God's going to get unraveled from time and stuff. And so we didn't have the guts, or frankly the mandate, to wipe out a bunch of Forgotten Realms gods, but we thought it would be fun to give future authors the tools to do that.
I gotta tell you, go ahead, Stephen. I'll tell.
You could basically pull what the Greeks and Romans did, is when they found a new god, they'd just be all like, that's Zeus.
Let's just smoosh them together.
So
Eric, 1,000 years, eventually they'll be the same guy.
Eric Boyd tells a funny story about how he had to get stuff through the editors, and he put the intensify sensation spell for one of those Charis type deities, right? And it's basically intensify orgasm, but he just changed the name on it. And he's like, "There's no way it's ever going to get through with all this stuff," and it actually went through during all that editing. So
and he said he put some juicy bits there, so the editors would focus on that.
I'll
the other ones can slip through.
I played that trick.
There's a vocabulary a moment for the chat, but I wrote one of the moon goddesses or something in that book, and I said that her temples emphasized Ionic architectural themes, and that didn't make it through the editors. They changed it to like female themes, and it's like, well, it's not quite
too bad, but
close, but not quite what I was going for.
Yeah,
just
I was 25. Okay.
So this is another excellent one by far. And here you have a cross-reference chart here on the side.
Yeah, look at this.
Yeah,
I was really proud of this.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
Was a beast.
So Casey's going to redline about half those. So
no, not in my campaign. I will definitely keep that.
Hey,
In a 0 level campaign, it doesn't matter.
Yes. No. It matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
So
Jaskar survive, Casey?
he's doing analysis still.
Jaskar, well,
God of Hills.
I'm
I'm only
Maybe
2/3
more.
of the way through with my destruction of the multiverse. So
Well, he's
son
on
of a-
letter G, so you.
You know what you should do is you should have Tharizdun kill all these gods, and then he
So-
speaks in
Yeah.
all capital letters the whole time, and to insult people, he's like, "You smell like a flower." Or whatever.
the brief
The way
version
Gordon
of this
Logan.
project, and I don't want to hijack too much, is in my brain,
brought it up.
Tharizdun is a worse overgod. He is Al. And he decided that life was stupid and he was going to end the experiment. And so all the other gods ganged up to stop that from happening, because without worshipers, no power, no souls, whatever. And so they have trapped Tharizdun away. And I've kind of recreated the divine rank hierarchy, going from mortal all the way up to like a god that is god of a galaxy, not just a planet. And that to me is something above Al and Tharizdun. Because in the book, right, Al goes and reports to a more powerful god in that Forgotten Realms time of troubles.
Do you know what that's
Yeah.
Ed Greenwood? That's Ed Greenwood, though, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm pretty sure that the god that Al reports to is literally Ed Greenwood sitting in his like bunker writing FR stuff.
right. And
Ed's
so
on,
you
Ed's
have-
on. Ed's on in a couple weeks. So
Yeah,
in
well,
cabin.
we
So
can
Ask him to confirm, but I'm pretty sure that
he's very candid. The only thing he
Al's
says,
boss.
if it's under
Is
a
it
D,
Al? I always called it AO, but I don't know anything
Yeah,
about
I don't know.
thank you.
it's AO.
it. Okay.
Ayo, yep.
Yeah.
AO.
A median.
AO.
I've never seen this before. A median gutworm.
I
That's
think
one of
that
the
was
originals.
the-
That Sam Wood just drew it, and then Sean just did what he was inspired to do.
It's kind of pretty cool. It's a cool one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then
I
you have
like
the
that.
Lossels or
Yeah, well, my all-time favorite, the Lossel, the
Yeah.
mongrels of the putrid tongue.
Oh, God, don't get
Well, they
Jake,
make an
shock
appearance in like Artifact of Evil or something. That was the main reason I
Mhm.
wanted to get them in.
They all-
yeah,
Fun
they're in the
scene where they're
Gorebooks.
swinging
also
through
from the ashes, all over the
forests.
place.
Yeah.
They are great. They're shock troops, baboons, and orc crossbreed. What could be even more? See, we cross orcs and everything in our campaign. That's what the mongrels of the putrid tongue do. So the Lossels are great. I know, Casey, I'm on a soapbox here about. I love Lossels.
Yeah, well, I know you do, and I'm coming from a point of view where if I were an orc, why would I have sex with a baboon? I wouldn't. So there must be some sort of magic, evil magic involved.
Steven's like,
yeah, I don't know if orcs are particularly picky.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Well, the
coming from a
baboons might
steward
not be
school
picky.
that
Yeah.
they're going to be
I
more
will say this hobby has become a lot less obsessed with orc crossbreeding in the last 22 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
That's probably a good thing. Quite
Yeah,
Yeah,
frankly.
that's probably a good thing. Yeah. Mhm.
Except for Beazle, except for elves, and that's the
But-
whole premise of the mongrels
You can
to figure
also-
out the magical orc elf.
Yeah.
How do you breed an orc with an elf? That's what they're trying to do.
No, but the thing is that you can also introduce, like in the real world, we can do it the biolab way, so to speak. You can have a fantasy version of that too.
Right.
And
But
Norkers,
hang on, the next page is the Norker.
I love Norkers.
Yeah.
Mm.
Love
Yeah.
Norkers
all
are
the
very-
Norkers are cool.
H-
Yeah.
You got
Great.
Sam Wood channeling Russ Nicholson there in that art, which I
Mhm.
appreciate.
Yep. I used Norkers in my last game session, so yeah, there's
2 attacks per round, great armor class.
Mhm.
You know, they're nasty. They're surprised when the goblins, and it turns out to be
Yeah,
a Norker.
that natural armor class. I remember I put some Norkers in a Living Greyhawk
lot.
adventure that I wrote, and people afterwards were like, "How did you get that armor class that high?" And I'm like, "I put them in armor."
Oh shit, because that stacks.
Yeah.
So I didn't even put them in the worst armor I could, but people are like, "We couldn't hit those things." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes D&D is hard."
Yeah, sometimes. Well, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say, but not for 5th. I kept my mouth
Oh.
shut.
Jay's
I'm-
got to push that 2E1E line at every one of these. It's
Wow.
all 2E1E, ladies and gentlemen.
2E
If you
1.
don't die during character creation, it's not D&D.
I've never said that. That's Traveler.
That's Traveler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Traveler. Yep.
Consult Limlaw subtable. That's MechWarrior.
I was just making fun of Grognards.
This is one of the Sword Wraith and Drown ones, in my opinion, are 2 of the best specific to Greyhawk Undead that there are. I just love them both. So
You like them more than the Animus?
yes,
That's
I
fair.
do. I'm not a big Animus fan. I get the idea behind the Animus, but I just think that it's too. Everyone's an Animus in the Great Kingdom now. It's too much. Does that make sense? The
It
sword,
does.
yeah. The sword wraith, you could use it at any place that there was a group of warriors died, and Drow ones, ship combat, on ports and stuff, just great. I use Drow ones all the time outside Harby, so very cool.
I mean, they're the things from the Lord of the Rings books, right?
That's a ring. That's a
That's like a ring wraith.
That's
That's more powerful.
barrow.
that's
That's
a
a
ring
barrow
wraith.
white. That's a barrow white.
Barrow White.
Like
yeah.
a ring wraith would be like
No,
a sword
the
wraith
ghosts,
leader, I
the
think.
arm, the ghosts that rise up and yeah.
You mean the 9?
Oh, anyway,
That's a sword wraith. No, I mean
No,
that's
no.
a ring wraith. That's a ring wraith. No, oh my God,
no,
barrow white.
Strider
That's a
runs
barrow
into a
white.
bunch of them.
Let us not talk about Tolkien.
Yeah,
Yes,
Greyhawk
please.
Chat, for God's sake.
For the love of God.
Too
man.
highfalutin for our influences in this room.
Alright.
Oh, what?
And then you've got
yes.
more dispatches.
More dispatches.
Yeah,
A
they're
out.
lot
really
of
cool.
dispatches.
Animus. There's nothing wrong with Animus. I just
I like the Animus.
I like them, but I like sword wraiths and Drow ones much more. So
They're much more versatile and they're much more playable at lower level, which
And
of
I-
course means you
I
see much more
didn't
table use
know-
than the Animus. The Animus is a one source book pony, honestly.
Mhm.
I didn't know, Eric, until just recently that James Jacobs made specialized Drow ones classes for Age of Worms. I didn't know that.
I didn't remember that, so
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
But,
like,
but I think the Animus is
cool.
not something that is cool that you're supposed to kind of spice up a stat block to fight as a monster. They're more
Doc,
like a
thank you.
flavor for the
Like a
campaign,
lore
so to speak.
monster almost.
Exactly.
They fill
it's
a
a lore.
lore niche
Mhm.
more than a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And it tells the campaign stories, and it's more of a story thing than a monster thing. So to
I
speak.
think that the both the sword wraith and especially the drowned one have also benefited from some really
Tim.
good art. I don't know that the Animus ever got some really killer art. I mean, Ivid the Undying had no art, so
Yeah.
we all just kind of had to imagine it. But
Mhm.
I remember the drowned one in the old Monsters Compendium Appendix for Greyhawk.
Yeah,
was
breaking through the
like a-
door.
Like a Tom Baxa illustration of this just like bloated pirate thing. And the idea of like water bloated undead is so
Yep.
gross.
That's-
Unturnable
I love it.
undead, which is made
Love it.
better.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that my favorite segment. Well, who can pick a favorite? But one of my favorite segments from Creepshow with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen. I can hold my breath for a long time.
That's a good one,
And,
yeah.
those are some drowned ones right there.
So Heterotic says this is a great one, number 4.
Oh yeah, Linda Medley art on the cover.
Yeah, really cool.
Love that.
So Steven, what's your thoughts going into this? We got articles from Eric, Gary, Sean, main things that look like the 3. Oh, the silent ones are in here.
Yeah,
Oh,
silence. Right.
yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. Things, I felt like one of so this is the last one that I'm the assistant editor for.
Okay.
And the real bad part is I think in a lot of ways as a standalone magazine, this is really the issue that it starts to really sort of cement the format and what we're doing and everything else. We've got the section of the city, and I was very excited about then later on we'll do other sections of the city. I love the city of Greyhawk. I love the map and everything else. So I was very excited about that. The silent sorcery, I remember because Eric and I had a conversation about using the term erection, which I found was a little silly, but I like the silent one thing, and I was getting a better grip of the mechanics and how to put those things together, and getting a better sense of all of these writers' styles and what they were doing, and being able to lean in on that as a copy editor rather than try to fight against it. And so I was so happy with this issue when it came out, and it was about that time that I found out it's all like, we're gonna shake things up, and your job is going to entirely change. And I was like, well, what? I'm just finally getting to the point where like this is becoming, something that's manageable, and I can see the future of this going down the line. And it's all like, yeah, we're going to have a whole bunch of layoffs. We're going to shake up the company a little bit. Eric's going to go upstairs. Here's Fright of Trister. Here's a big stack of adventures that need to be done next week. See you later.
What fun.
Well, what? Yeah. Which did end up being fun and rewarding and everything else, and it taught me other things about about organized play and the role playing game industry and whatnot. But yeah, it just came at a point where I was finally feeling like, okay, I think we've got this, and then the rug gets pulled.
So
But I have fond memories of this.
Look at this caption. Ghouls are nasty. When the roll grants them spells, which is the same thing with drowned ones, they're animated by the roll. They're worse. This lovely lad can be found in one of these brand new adventures. Great artwork.
That is great artwork.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that one.
All right, and here we go. More of Clarksburg, another area that needs more attention in the Free City Greyhawk. Love this too. Great work here. Talking, really fleshing out this area of the town. Also noting that Rick Miller, you placed a spot in here too. I think it's this building right here. We had that discussion. You made it a headquarters, and you and Malden worked that out. So we had a lot of other locations. I mean, it's just, like I said, I've incorporated all this into my when we play in Greyhawk. So fantastic stuff. Just some wonderful detail here. A great library picture, really cool. So, all right.
And
Seeker's
I really like
Compound.
this section because I was a big fan of Saga of Old City, and and this is kind of where Chert and Gord, they go act as college students for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that or is that one of the short stories?
No, that's
And,
in the book.
That was it. That was just in the first book. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely.
And I kind of, as a young kid dreaming about going to college and everything else, I kind of liked that idea that you could, be going to college and be kind of miscreants at the same time. Which I did. But yeah, so I always liked this part of town.
Okay. Silent Ones, Gary Julian, big article. Another one, really just talking about them. And you got the Seekers and the Silent Ones, right?
And
Button
lots
heads.
of game mechanics. There are spells, features, class abilities, and a whole bunch of stuff in it. So yeah.
And we got a good question from Avon Avengers about whether or not Living Greyhawk players could level into the prestige class Silent Ones. There was a lot of campaign documentation about what you could and couldn't do, and I don't remember where the Living Greyhawk journal stuff fell, but I would have assumed it would have been open.
I'm almost positive in the Keelan discussion that this Judy said yes. I'm almost positive on that you could. So Silent Towers even done here. Look at that. That's an awesome.
That's an awesome.
I would have insisted upon this. Yeah, I like that. I remember going and getting some feedback from R&D about this one, and they were all like, Steven, can't this just be a prestige class? Why does this have to be so long? I'm like, shh. Let's just talk about the prestige. Like, there's all of these words before this, and I'm like, shh. Just help me with this, right? Let me know we're on the right track.
We can ask.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, we can ask them if they remember how many there were. Or I don't know if the Greyhawk Reborn people who are doing it now would know, but we can ask them too. They may, Dave Guerreri and Jay Stupinski may know from the old days too, so we can ask them. In fact, by the way, everyone, they put in 17 adventures for Virtual GreyhawkCon, Greyhawk Reborn. All right, so they just added a boatload of adventures for everyone to play in. So we're well over 50 now for that coming up. Oh, look, there's your favorite name, Eli Tomaras. There, your favorite person there, Casey.
I like that guy.
Yeah.
That, by the way, that piece of art was the first time Eli Tomaras was ever illustrated. And when we had Wayne Reynolds do the cover for Dungeon 112, which was the Mari Castle cover, they used that as the reference.
Wow.
And Kalman Andrzejowski, the artist, recently put some of these pieces up for sale online, and I was happy to snag that piece.
You have this?
Yeah. So I've got the original Eli
nice.
Tomarast art, and then I've got Wayne's cover for 112 in my as two of my pieces of original D&D art. So I was really pleased. I thought he really came up with a very distinctive. I thought this looked like almost like Disney villains, you know, like from a creepy Disney movie or something. And I thought he'd added a really nice touch and really gave life to those demonic hands. And then a few years later, Wayne took it kind of the next level.
Oh, I've said this multiple times. I was so upset when I found out. I want the Marquesa original, and that's long gone, destroyed from the slavers. Marquesa and Devon. That's the one I wanted from Wayne Reynolds, and you just can't. Not available, unfortunately. The original.
Bummer.
Yeah. The Enemies of the Silent Ones. This is great. A great article by Gary. You get in a lot of detail here. This is if you're doing a subterfuge, magic, Keelan campaign. Great data. I mean, think about it. So far, we've gone through these. There's more Keelan data in here than any of the other regions as far as content that you really need to seek out. If you're venturing, this is where to get this plus. If you add this in to that, you got a lot. I mean, you got the whole gamut of areas, but you know, with Keelan, you get a lot of great data here. Here's your silent one.
Just about every Keeland article, I remember when I was copying, doing the copy edits for it, and I'd have questions for Erik, and Erik would get so exasperated with me. He's like, "Well, Stephen, this is from blah 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 blah."
Yeah,
like, I've never even heard of this before, and I think my Greyhawk knowledge is okay.
Don't you remember the big flame war we had in the folder number 5 of the AOL Greyhawk area? We firmly established this Keelan stuff. Come on,
I'm like,
catch up.
I was part of the Forgotten Realms group back then. Sorry.
Gary and Fred and I especially, we spent hours together. I mean, even just for fun, talking about this stuff online, trying to understand it, trying to figure out if there was a there behind some of these clues and things. And it got to the point where we were almost just like a unit together. And then having collaborated on the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, it's funny looking through this magazine. It's pretty easy to understand why people think it was all cut material from that book, because half the 3/4 of this thing is written by the authors of that book.
Yeah.
So I get it. But part of that was just because we were so on the wavelength and we had so much to say. You know, Keeland was just the first. We had plans to go and do dozens of other countries down the road, and some of that manifested in what I'm sure we'll talk about later in the Dragon era of Living Greyhawk Journal, such as it is. But we really pulled it off with Keeland, I think, with this magazine.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to keep you all too long. You know, it's up to you, but we're almost to the 2 hours as it is. So please tell me, you were courteous enough to come on. So just let me know if we want to. Just you go to shout outs now, because that'll take about 15-20 minutes as it is. So I just want to make sure we can always come back and do 5 and 6 and, beyond a future time for other discussions, or we can keep on going for a little bit longer.
Hey, real quick before you move on from 4.
Yep.
Go to the special boons, the 5 contest entrance.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What page?
Oh,
Quick. It's in the front matter.
Oh, I missed it. Okay.
Yeah.
we gave them the worlds. Bart Scott. Oh my gosh, I know Bart.
There you go.
Bart
We got
Scott.
to play an Asimar character.
Okay.
The high-strung prelates of the Theocracy of the Pale will have a lot to answer for when this paladin applies some mercy to the hard-bitten doctrine of Foltest.
So is that the first Asimar character ever played in Greyhawk?
I would go so far as to say it was probably the first Asimar character ever played in any organized play campaign.
Wow, and now it's a
Yes.
regular race.
I don't think we had him in Living City. I could be wrong. There were a lot of things let in by auction
Right.
in Living City late in the day, but it was certainly the first one that we allowed in the campaign. Yeah.
Okay, and ironically, unknown member asked for a neat magic mask to protect his character from the recognition of NPCs. True to form, he didn't include his name on his request, and we tore off his return address when opening his entry. Oh, that is funny. Keith Palm. All right, Snow Elf.
Keith.
There's the Snow Elf. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Eric Loki of Sharptown, Maryland, and so Septic gets to become the first forest spirits to become the dim forest advocate, bane of giants and enemies of the wood. So we should ask Eric Mengi and Jose about that sometime, Casey. Right?
Yeah.
I like this last one. It says, sometimes life stinks. Other times it's just the young troglodyte adventurer standing near the back of the group. I used to have to fill so many columns of letter columns and this type of shit that you get loopy after a while, and you just try to make yourself laugh as you're
Sure.
It's fun to read this stuff.
Scaladar to troglodyte. I wonder whatever became of Scaladar. Did he go far in living Greyhawk? Did he ascend to high status? These are all.
I vaguely remember asking, "We're letting somebody play a troglodyte?" Really?
That's awesome, though. Those outliers are good. I really, I think we all as DMs have them. Like when we're running a game, we're like, well, I'm going to allow this, and then you may have your regrets about doing it, but I think we all have them as a DM.
Well, you have to push the boundaries in the campaign in your games attempt to know where.
What page, Eric?
How far you can go.
So Bart's.
Sorry. Go ahead, Stephen.
Giving Bart Scott the Azamar was a mistake, because I've never met a broken combination that Bart Scott doesn't love.
This here, a word from our art director pushing the comic Castle Waiting, which at the time Linda Medley was doing. I 100% guarantee you that was written by me because I was a big fan of that comic. And Robert brought a lot, in particular on Polyhedron. Robert Rapier, the art director, he brought a lot of really good Vertigo artists to the covers of Poly. And even at the time, I was not a big Vertigo guy. So there were a couple of those artists where I was like, wow, this art's really cool, but I've never heard of this guy. And now I'm like, I'm so proud that I publish magazines with covers by these guys. And so he was a great addition.
That is fantastic.
He also had kind of like this gleeful thing of getting these artists for ridiculously low prices. At times, sometimes he'd be all like, "Guess how much we have paid for this?" And it's like,
yikes! I don't remember that part, but yeah.
Dune Stalker.
I remember we got Michael Kaluta to do a big Living City article.
That's what I remember.
And I think it was much more like, I can't believe Michael Kaluta took our shitty rates, and but he just illustrated a whole bunch of stuff. That was so cool to get to see. What I was looking for actually earlier a little bit was trying to find the art order for Eli Tomarest and how I described it, and then we could compare it to. But unfortunately, it looks like my computer only goes back to about issue number 5. I can't easily find the working files for the earlier issues. They're on a different computer or something. I don't need to leave in the next little bit. I don't know about Steven.
No, I can hang out for a bit.
Okay. All right. Good. There you go, everyone.
I got one more issue to go. We might as well get the whole thing.
And we'll save Gary. We'll save the Death Knight one for a time. Maybe we can get Gary on number 6. So, but I wanted to be courteous and ask you all before I just did it here. So a Nerian boat crusher. I've never heard of this creature before till now. Looking here.
Same exact. It was the one Sam Wood drew, and then Sean just took a flight of fancy on.
Wow.
So that didn't exist prior to. That's one of those new things.
That's a good one to put up in the near Deve, let me tell you. Colons, I use them all the time. Wow, that is unbelievable artwork for the colon, because the Fiend Foley artwork is terrible. That is fantastic.
I really wanted this creature to come out great. I like that. I like that creature quite a lot.
Yeah, they're super cool. 8-9 feet tall. They're insane. Mm-hmm. They have that special sharpness of the weapon they can do. That is an awesome piece of artwork. Wow. Yep. Cool. Let's see what we got here. Here's some more dispatches, of course, around. Everyone's dead in abandoned kingdoms by this point, right? No, I'm just kidding there, Casey.
Yeah, they didn't have one in this issue because they were slacking.
You were still not at a triad yet.
No. All predates me.
Okay. Number 5. So thanks for 491 Phantom. Good to see you. All right, so here we go. Number 5. So Stephen, you are off doing something else at this point.
Well, I got that whole state of the campaign where it talks about where the campaign's going. And so
there you go.
I become the campaign director, and I'm like, we're making changes, kids.
Okay, the lost issue. All right, so there. We also have an extension on Clarksburg. The second half of it. First half was in the previous one. The second half is in this one on Clarksburg. Zeef, which is if Indicarus was on, he'd be really ecstatic about that. Let's go see. Here we go. So talk about what you discuss here, Stephen.
Basically, I talk about Erik moving up. Basically, Erik moving out, the changes we're going to make to Greyhawk. I think I talk Fright of Trister, of course, a big topic of conversation. And basically moving forward with the adventure certificates rather than having individual certs, and basically where we're going from this point on. Now that I've got a tremendous stack of things, as the campaign has taken off like gangbusters. At this point, I think I'm still coming in weekends with my friends, including Chris Lindsay. And we are going through Trister packets, probably anywhere between 40 to 70 a weekend, trying to get these things out. And then being rewarded every time we get out 100, we get back 200.
Yeah, it was pretty popular,
mail.
as it turned out.
Yeah. And so,
Wow.
And so it was me just trying to explain where we're going on this. So I talk about the Isle of Woe, which is something we ended up running, and the fact that we're structuring it basically with meta regions, with circle members, and stuff like that. Is basically all of this is me sitting in meetings with my bosses, most of which at that point did organized play for the card games, especially Magic. And how can we make this doable with the staff that's left? So when I came into the RPGA, we had David Wise, we had Erik, we had Scott Magner, we had Tom Coe, we had Robert Weiss, and we had me. And at this point, it's me. Everybody else, like Magner, went to go work with the New Living City folks. Tom Coe had some health issues and had to leave for a while, I believe. Robert did whatever Robert does. And Dave, I think, got laid off in one of the rounds of plays, which I was really sad. I loved working. David Wise was a great first boss to have at Wizards. He was always...
Yeah, I agree. He was a really conscientious
willing
guy.
to listen to me. And in fact, when the RPGA was going to get sold in its entirety, I went to David, and he was the first one I talked to. I'm like, don't do this. I don't think this is a good idea. And he actually listened to me, and I ended up going to the vice president's office and explaining my viewpoint on that. And by the time I was done, Wizards had decided to just sell the Living City campaign and leave the rest intact. But it could have gone in a totally different direction.
And that turned into an utter failure, and it would have destroyed the entire RPGA if they had sold it.
That was Dancy, right? The debacle.
I agree.
I don't know.
And that, yes. And that's exactly what I told him. I remember, so I told him that, and they're like, okay, Stephen, we're going to think about this. And I hadn't got the answer yet. And then one of Dancy's friends, who will remain nameless, Scott Wagner, came to me and said, Stephen, we really want you to come over to the new company. And I told them basically the same things that I said before. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going. I'm either going to stay here or end up leaving the industry. I don't know which one yet.
So with that, I love this. So this one was delayed almost a year.
Oh, bro.
The lost issue.
I can't 100% even remember. It says, the article's like, find me at a con, and if I have 7 or 8 beers, I'll tell you. I think I've had way too many beers at this point, because I can't. All I really remember is that this got caught in the jaws of my transfer, and it was like almost done. I don't know what it was. I think it might have been that the dispatches came in really. There was some part of this was a real problem, and I can't remember what it was. It was not Fred's article. Fred had put his heart into this Zeef thing, and he was working on that at the same time Gary was working on Keelan. And so I think, again, we had plans to do a lot of these nations and really get deep into them. And I think Fred was always like, when's mine going to come out? When's mine going to come out? And, you know, the delay was from July 2001 to like March 2002. So it wasn't quite a year, but it was a long ass time. And I've always thought that, and I don't know if there's any truth to this or whatever, but I barely ever talked to Fred ever again after this finally came out. And I always thought that he just kind of thought, you know, Watsy, he came into the Greyhawk project when we were being sold a bill of goods. It was like, Greyhawk's going to be a major campaign setting and there's going to be all kinds of books. And he really was an instrumental part of the success of the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. We literally couldn't do it. Gary and I could not have done that without him. And so he was like a third partner. And then he showed up at Gen Con in that photo that you mentioned before, and that was kind of the last time, at least I'm aware of. Maybe he's resurfaced since, but we all kind of lost track of him. And I always sort of blame myself because this issue just took so long to come out. And I think that there was just a series of just kind of like, I don't know, just elements that I always figured he sort of perceived as unprofessionalism or whatever. And I think he just decided he had better things to do with his time. And that was a huge bummer because he was one of the most creative and just intelligent contributors to that early Greyhawk community, and losing him was really a disappointment for me, both as a Greyhawk fan and because I felt like, you know, the delays related to this issue, that I had something to do with it. So I think that the secret history of this issue is that it may have cost us Fred, unfortunately.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. But it finally came out, and you know, and that, you know, just this is a stupid publishing thing, but you'll note that the paper stock on this is significantly shittier.
Oh, okay.
And part of that was because this was let's just do it because to be nice, you know, like we don't want to let this thing fester. Let's just get it out. But no one wanted to spend money on it because you know this was no longer part of the strategy by the time this came out.
What a shame.
So, like the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer at all, in many ways, this was like this probably shouldn't have happened, but we were able to.
Luke Gygax? Luke Gygax was on, everyone. Saying
hello. Hey, Luke.
Hello.
Hi, buddy.
It is a Motley crew, isn't it? Yeah, we're talking the Living Greyhawk Journal era. Stephen, please go ahead. You had the thought there.
I think
he froze.
For a second.
He's like,
yep. I lost him for a little bit.
Hey, Luke, Doug Behringer gave me a miniature of your dad at Gen Con this year, and it's one of my prized possessions. So he joins the ranks of all my unpainted figures.
While we're waiting for Stephen to unfreeze, Darling, who just recently came on, said, "Oh my God, little baby Erik from the picture, ha ha."
Oh no, that might be dangerous ammunition.
Yeah. So, Stephen may have done a complete freeze here. So, yep, the mind games. You're going to be mind gamed to death there Saturday night, Darling, with the Suave Squad return. So, as we're waiting for see if Stephen, he may have to log back on to Zoom. He may have completely frozen off.
It's not a bad pose he froze.
Yeah, it is. He's in deep thought there. Yep, there he goes. He DC'd. So we'll see if he comes back on here. So, all right. Well, it's cool that he had this lost issue discussion here. Then we had the Malden Erik discussion going on Gem of the Flannis, Clarksburg Part 2. Once again, I love all this. The detail is so fantastic. It deep dives into things that are in the Free City Greyhawk box set. You need the 3 articles for the Artisan Quarter and the 2 Clarksburgs are a must-have for anyone who's adventuring in Greyhawk and the city. All right, just in my opinion. So, just love it. Really goes in some detail, and we lost Stephen, but we've had him for 2 hours so far there, Luke and crew. It's good to see you, Luke. Hopefully you had a great time at Gen Con. Like I said, I know so many people. Everyone's posting on Twitter they got COVID too. I
didn't even go to Gen Con and I got freaking COVID.
That's true, Casey. So Anna, while waiting for Stephen to come on, do you have a question for Erik about this era?
Well, I must say that I'm just blown away how much cool content they managed to pack into these issues, and also the production values. We have to remember these are 20 years old and some, and I must say it's kind of full color graphics on every page, all the cool art, all the cool backgrounds and stuff. It's amazing.
That was a real. Sorry. That was a real part of the moment. You know, it was, let's elevate this stuff. It's third edition. It's a new game. The core rule books were all, you know, in full color, and actually we took polyhedron to full color as well. So that was a big part of it. And even the nice paper stock, you know, Donna Woodcock's got a credit in here as the production person. We worked with her to pick all the paper stock, and it was really a fun job. I mean, if it wasn't for the seasonal terror of getting laid off all the time, it would have been almost 100% upside.
But it was cool, and now we have to realize afterwards that set a new era for role-playing games in general, so to speak. It elevated the whole genre in that time, so to speak, when third edition came out around 2000, that we got like a game that was much bigger in scope, had much more product and much bigger production values and stuff, and to me that opened up, that became my edition, so to speak. And I stayed on in third edition, and then back in Pathfinder so it was my edition and my part of the game for 20 years.
Very respect.
I mean, the impact of living Greyhawk cannot be overstated. I'm just going to toot y'all's horn here for a second. I got out of the Army. It was like 2001. I'm working in a bookstore. Some guys go to buy the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. And I'm like, hey, what's that, guys, that you're buying? And they told me about this thing called Living Greyhawk. And it literally got me back into D&D. After God knows how long. And then a few years later, I'm writing stuff and I'm working my way up the triad, you know, hierarchy. And I've heard similar stories from a lot of gamers of our age. And it got people back into Greyhawk, you know, after the Forgotten Realms kind of blew up during second edition.
Well, that was a big revelation of AOL and Greyhawk in the early 90s. Holy shit, I'm not alone. There's a lot of other people who like this. And it's no mistake. I mean, it was a huge thing in the 80s. I mean, and you know, that new, Stephen knows all about this, but that new history of D&D book that just came out, it's got all those sales charts. And it's pretty interesting how well Greyhawk Adventures did relative to things like Dragonlance Adventures even at the time. So it's not surprising to me that those of us who came to D&D anywhere from the very beginning, like the college days and things, that's before my time, but during that early 80s peak number one, you know, this was an opportunity for us all to get back together and to understand and share. I think the fact that Greyhawk never spelled it out for you the same way that Forgotten Realms or some of the later campaign settings did meant that there was an inherent mystery. We all had to kind of solve it, and we all had to work together, and there was so much collaboration going on through Council of Greyhawk and projects on Greytalk and ultimately Cannon Fire and things like that, that it knit the community together so tightly from the very beginning. And it's still, that garden is still bearing fruit. It's amazing.
Casey, can you check with Steven on Discord if he's having problems?
Sure. The book you're referencing, I think, Slaying the Dragon, we had Ben on the author a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I gotta watch that.
It was a great conversation.
Luke has it too.
And I also think another thing that was a lucky coincidence or part of the planning, it was the era when internet came of age, when that outreach and group kind of community building in a completely new way was possible, even globally. Meaning all of a sudden these products had a market for anyone who had enough money to spend and could speak or read and write English enough to be part of the community. And I'm one of them. So I kind of came in this era. I played D&D a long time before, but it was inconceivable for me to take part in the community up until the internet came around, because that kind of tied in a global community to it as well. So I think that also was probably one of the wonderful outcomes of that age, was that it built global community around the role-playing games and Greyhawk.
And I was blessed to have a group still that had been running for 20 years at the time, and the same players still. And so we were like, we're going to keep on doing what we're doing.
And Anna, I wasn't part of that AOL wave, but Theo, who was a Bandit Kingdoms Triad member, used to grill Gary Gygax about Stoink, apparently, because that was Theo's main interest from the Gord novels, and we were in Bandit Kingdoms, and Stoink was off limits according to the RPGA rules documents for Living Greyhawk in the early years. So just the fact that you could do that was an amazing thing in the 90s.
The reason it was off limits is because we still were holding out hope that we might be able to find that manuscript.
There's my wrong button of the night.
You might be able to win. He's hitting buttons.
We were trying to find the manuscript for Gary's original Stoink thing. So why would we let us mess it up when there was the potential?
I've been wondering if that was it, and I should have asked you that earlier.
We were chasing rumors all the time about that. I was talking to Gary about publishing Castle Greyhawk back then. He would have done it, but he wanted royalties, quite understandably. Sure. But Wizards would not pay royalties on anything, so that was a dead issue. But we all of us, even from the fandom days, were just trying to find that lost manuscript, and
that's what Theo was grilling him.
I don't think we ever really found the book itself.
We ended up doing Stoink stuff in the Bandit Kingdoms. I mean, eventually we just got to a point where we knew that no one in the circle or RPGA would, destroy us for doing it. So we did, but
But it's a good compilation. Meaning, I'm starting reading through these books, these journals again after reading them once like a decade or 15 years ago, and it's still finding new cool nuggets. And because now when I'm reading them, I have much more of a understanding and knowledge of the setting because I've worked with it for another 10 years of digesting the material. And to me, it's amazing how much cool stuff that is packed in. First of all, that you had 20, 30 years of Greyhawk material to fall back on when you did it, but also there was that you came in with a bunch of people that had the passion of being fans of the original and then go in and be professional doing it.
And we always wanted to leave new mysteries, and there's a lot of stuff that we could have just come out and said that we instead just kind of put the crumbs in there for other people to find. And I'd be willing to bet a lot of that still hasn't been figured out, today. So God only knows what secrets people are going to pull out of this.
All right, see if you can get in touch with Stephen he may not be able to come back on, Casey, with his issues. So let's burn through this. So we got talking about Fred's great article here. Look at this artwork. Wow.
Yeah, Raven Mimura. Good
there
artist.
You go. I'm not going to move Stephen. I'm going to leave him in that corner down there, and hopefully,
just put me in the corner.
Oh, he's back.
Speaking of crumbs, some of the crumbs you guys put in Living Greyhawk Gazetteer are showing up in 5th edition stuff. The Wind Dukes are mentioned in a 5e book. It's just like a throwaway line.
Well, that's some Whisper and Cairn shit right there. That's Age of Worms #1.
Well, and they're referenced in the Felreeve Forest in the Living Greyhawk, or they're hinted at for the Felreeve. I think they show up in Fizban's Dragon book or whatever, briefly mentioned.
I'll take your word for it.
So Gary just asked this question. I think you may have answered this. What, Eric, what's your story on Fred from your point of view? You really touched it. He kind of.
Well, I think I touched on it. I think he was very disappointed with how long it took for some of this stuff to come out, and I think he was underwhelmed. I think he thought perhaps that when we did the big panel at Gen Con that there would be, trumpets and it would be a bigger deal than it was. And I think that the reality was a lot of the Greyhawk stuff that we got out by the skin of our teeth and by kind of sliding in between people who had the power to crush it. And people were trying to kill it all the time, the whole time. It was on my end. I mean, I think I've talked about this in one of the earlier Living Greyhawk Gazetteer chats we did, but there were people with knives out for that every single day. And I had to play dumb every once in a while. I had to talk and drink a potion of glibness and talk my ass off to just save it at numerous occasions. And so I tried to protect Gary and Fred from some of that politics that was happening at the company, figuring if I just take the brunt of it, they don't have to have the same kind of nervous breakdowns I'm having constantly. And I think eventually Fred realized that Greyhawk wasn't going to be the next Forgotten Realms, and I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I'd love to ask him someday. I really regret the fact that he walked away. So
Stephen,
that's my take.
Your thoughts, Stephen?
There was definitely a difference in philosophy between basically what Fred and Eric and everybody wanted to do with Greyhawk and what R&D wanted to do with Greyhawk,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in a lot of ways, I think a lot of folks in R&D just wanted Greyhawk to be a list of names that they could sort of lean into. And they didn't want to have to read the lore and everything else. They just wanted to sit there and say, well, this isn't Greyhawk. A little bit of quite frankly, is how the Forgotten Realms works in 5e right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not unsympathetic to that point of view to a certain degree, because people end up being tied to their own stories and everything else. There is definitely a difference between the player side of the equation and the GM side of the equation, especially as the GMs love to world build and make you immersed and everything else. And players are all just like, where are we going? What am I getting? What are we, you know? And so I can see, I love the fact that Living Greyhawk Journal and the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer was able to present this world in this new and interesting and evocative way, but I think that a lot of folks in R&D just didn't see it that way.
I think of it as a generational thing, if I'm being honest, because I was in the middle of it trying to understand it the whole time. And I think that if you take somebody like Bill Slavisek, who was in charge of D&D at the time, I'd be willing to bet that he and a lot of people in his slightly older than Stephen and I age cohort, when they thought of Greyhawk, what they thought of was the 1980 folio. I mean, I know this from
It's not even 83.
And so everything after that was kind of like not, you know,
Fluff.
maybe they'd already solidified their tastes about liking some other thing. Maybe they wanted to make their own campaign settings. And so for them, Greyhawk really was about as shallow as it was presented in that 1980 set, you know. And as you recall, there's a version of the, you know, the campaign guide, but it's much shorter and stuff. And so if you look at the D&D Gazetteer that they put out at the time we did the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, that whole thing was a reaction because they hated our book, which was just filled with lore. And my take on it was always like, guys, I can't turn it off. I know all this stuff by heart. So if you want to get into Greyhawk, I'm going to take you there. But I think they were just like, no, man, you know, the Duchy of Ernst is just a name on a map and it could be everybody's thing. And I get that philosophy. I was just in no way whatsoever.
Yeah, Erik, can I ask you a follow-up on that one? Meaning, was there, we have this notion that TSR went under because they diversified into too many settings and stuff. Was that
and that
part
was
of, part of the
wisdom
discussion
at the time.
from
It's true. Read that book. I'm sure it'll tell you.
Yeah.
What happened.
So yeah, that was in fresh memory, so to speak, in 1990.
Well, and also they had just killed Ravenloft, Planescape, Alternity, Mystara. So all, you know, I come in again, I think I went through all this before in a previous interview, but I came in and it was just like, I'm going to be the Greyhawk setting guy, and they're all like, who the fuck you are, you know, what is that? And then, you know, and the other thing I learned early on was the boss of the RPG, as Stephen mentioned, was David Wise, but the uber boss of the RPGA was Lisa Stevens, at least in the earlier era there, until she got laid off. And she was employee number one at WotC. She enjoyed a much wider latitude than a lot of other employees there did. And so, you know, I was introduced around my first week, and I was like, oh, I'm freelancing and we're doing the big Greyhawk setting book. And it was very clear to me that almost nobody that I talked to in RPG R&D even knew that was happening. So it was a strategic imperative, and it was a big part of the marketing, but it hadn't really been communicated to a lot of other people. And I think one of the reasons we faced as much opposition as we did was, I mean, quite justifiable sort of jealousy in some ways that all these other campaigns had just died. And here's the RPGA sneaking a child in to spearhead a new campaign setting, you know, and I think Jonathan Tweet and those guys were like, we're not even getting to work on a campaign setting yet. What the hell? So it faced rigorous opposition the whole time, and in a way that I think has continued to make me feel a little bit not part of the cool kid club.
I don't know about that, man.
Sort of mainstream vanilla D&D people. So that's just always how I felt, but I don't mind being slightly the outsider. It's kind of a fun
Ben, who wrote the Slaying the Dragon book, is apparently interested in the beginning of third edition. I guess he had a seminar about it at Gen Con. I haven't seen the.
Oh, interesting.
Gary
and,
Con.
yeah, it was
Anna and I
fantastic.
watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Well, he
fantastic
did it
seminar.
again at Gen Con.
Oh, he did do it at Gen Con. Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't seen the stream for it yet. But I
Yeah.
believe it might be very interesting to see what his thoughts are with what you just touched on there, Eric, about where they wanted to take third edition.
I hope he writes a book. He should call me.
That's
and
the
Steven,
thing.
Steven said he got a lot of
He's
data
working
too.
on it, so when there's no time frame. But I really want to see a follow up because that Slaying the Dragon was a really good book. It was a good read.
It was definitely. So let's why don't we wrap up with some closing thoughts here.
Yep.
While Steven's still been functioning here in the Zoom world, so Steven, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know it's looking back all these years ago, but what unbelievable content you guys put out in those first 2 years of these journals are unbelievable.
The journals are unbelievable, and I am glad to have my small part in their creation and everything else. The lion's share of the credit goes to Erik and the other team of writers, but it could be a really good first look into what you could do and to create excitement and fun with D&D and organized play programs. And I'm always been very grateful of the experience.
Well, it's appreciated. It really is. And we'll talk about what you're currently doing here in a second, because I know that's pretty cool as well. Erik, what are your thoughts?
Pride mostly. I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I think that then the magazine, we can cover this in a different topic, but then the magazine moved into being a section of Dragon, and that was its whole different thing. And you kind of knew going in it was going to end up being sort of diminishing the whole time almost. So there is elements of regret, like the story I told about Fred, that's hard to not kind of think wistfully about and wonder if there might have been a smarter way to go about certain things. But looking over it again, I'm very proud of what we put together. It was a dream. We went from working on the Orth Journal and collaborating online and posting long articles to Greyhawk to collaborate. I mean, those days when no one's still seen Gary Holian in person, but I've talked to him. We used to have long conversations about this stuff on the phone, and that was super fun. It was just like it felt like the culmination of a lot of effort, and I got to work on it with some of the people I considered to be some of my favorite collaborators and favorite people in the space. And I got to meet Steven during that, and Steven and I have continued to be at times colleagues and friends all along. And so I just have tremendously warm feelings about that whole era. Even when I think back to it, it was a lot of opposition and fear and terror and things like that. It was not always easy, but nothing that's worth doing is easy. And I'm proud of what we put together as a team.
Gary just came up with a genius idea on chat. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm going to ask you all if you'd participate. We had the top 30 adventures of all time, and you know how I think about one in the top 10, which I don't think, but well, neither here nor there. What if we redid it?
You keep railing against Child's Play, and
after the stream, I want to talk to you about that too. I would love for us to redo the top 30, but make it the top 30 Greyhawk published adventures of all time.
Oh, I like that idea.
You like that?
Yeah.
Steven, would you participate? We'll get through a list in the next 4 to 6 months. We'll get Anna, myself, and maybe a team on Cannon Fire. We'll get them all together, and then we'll give them all out to everyone, and then we'll get a discussion group together, and then we'll have a show on it and what we chose, what the panel chose. I think it's a genius idea,
That's
Gary.
a cool idea. I would love to.
All right. Okay. All right. You like that? Yes. Gary, let's do it. Top 30 of all time, or top 25 to 30 Greyhawk adventures published, and that'll count. If you guys want to even throw Carlos Adventures in there, I'm fine with that. Or Dragon Dungeon Magazine Adventures are our Greyhawk ones. I mean, there's some good ones. There's some really, really good adventures. Yeah.
Well, you could put just about
Whoops, Steven, we lost you again.
in there.
Yeah, Age of Worms can count.
Age of
Savage Tide, yeah, absolutely. Expeditions, all of them. I think it'd be a really cool thing that the community would love to do. And just
I'm
another.
going to look at some of the best Greyhawk maps, not including my own that is in published work, because mine has never been officially published.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look into some of the cartography, because there are some really good gems in there, hidden ones here and there. So yeah.
I love Showcanth myself, Zombie Cajun, but I still don't think it's number one. I think myself personally, I think Temple Elements Evil is number one.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
Yeah, but
it is hard to beat.
But
although it's not getting a whole lot of love on the internet
no.
these days, I find.
Well, and it's
GDQ's too much.
Great,
the Giants should be
Giants
should be one. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. We're jumping into the show.
Jumping into another show.
Hey, that's content, man.
We've got to do. You guys have to do that one. We need to do Greyhawk alum and publishing.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I said this is 6 months out. This because I got I have to concentrate on out my Free City of Altamira box set with Anna and Troller Games. And so if I don't, Stephen Schultz going to beat me. So that's number one on the thing now for now. So all right, let's do some shout outs. Stephen, what you got going on, man?
Right now, I am the lead designer for The Glimmering, which is a 5e game and campaign setting where we're using blockchain technology, NFTs and stuff to track magic items for our organized play program. It's been a lot of fun. It's given me a deep dive into 5e, solidifying things that I absolutely love about its game design and things that I don't, and then I just fix the things I don't.
Understood. How many people you got working under you there? You got a nice crew?
Well, right now I've got two freelancers that are helping me out. One in the wing that's mostly in which we haven't announced yet, but it's kind of a big deal. I'll announce it at some point in time. Probably fill that all in, but there's so much involved with the technology and building it out and whatnot. We're working on getting that solidified, and hopefully we'll have. Well, we've already got one adventure published, a Dark and Story Night that we've been playing with various groups. It's got really good feedback. It's kind of an introduction into that, and we're going to be producing a lot more and rule books for the setting in the game.
Stephen, thank you so very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was awesome. I mean, we went from just Anna and I just reading this stuff in there to some in-depth, really wonderful knowledge. It's been such a wonderful discussion. Erik, what's going on at Paizo?
Oh boy, well, we just published the Dark Archive, which is the newest source book for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's a paranormal themed source book. It's got two new classes, the Psychic and the Thaumaturge, and it is very, very cool. It is a set up like a folio of 8 dossiers covering occult topics that were stolen from the Pathfinder Society. So each one covers things like mirrors and imposters, cults, cryptozoological creatures, time anomalies, and a bunch of really fun stuff. Each little chapter comes with a bunch of player character abilities and a short adventure to immerse yourself into the paranormal goodness. So that just released, got great reception at Gen Con. On the side, I've been doing a lot of performing online with the Glass Cannon Network. They just ran programming all weekend long at Gen Con, and I played 5e for the second time in a row.
Wow.
I was introduced to the game by the preeminent 5e GM Darling Creepshow of Lord Gasumba Slav Squat Squad fame. So my second game went great. And all that stuff is archived as video on demands on their channel and will eventually be coming out in YouTube in the next couple of weeks. So if you like watching me play Pathfinder and D&D, there's a bunch of that coming out on the Glass Cannon shortly.
Awesome.
You guys had some great numbers I saw during Gen Con on everything you did, which was fantastic to see. There was a lot of interest.
They have assembled just an amazing crew of streamers, and it's so fun to get to play with them.
Jay, when do you think we'll see Venerium? Again?
Well, that's what we're talking. That's what Darling and I are talking about now. Getting
Good old Venarium
getting Flavius and Venerium back together. If before we go off, Eric, if once I raid in, if we could talk about that, that would be cool as well. Casey, what's going on?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Stephen and Eric for joining us, especially last minute. I just kind of reached out there, and Stephen was kind enough to be like, yeah, that sounds fun. And then Eric. So thank you very much. You guys being here is great for the community, and it's great for me because one of my projects I think I'm going to start soon is the sequel to my book will be the unofficial history of living Greyhawk, I think. And these interviews are going to be very important for me to at least start that process and thinking, how do I want to approach that project?
Good archive for you. That's great.
Awesome. Yep.
So we'll see. But right now, for smaller, I've got my project Too Many Gods, which we talked about earlier tonight. My Ghosts of Salt March campaign is entering its 4th year. The PCs are hitting 10th level, and I'm about to wrap up that book and then figure out what the hell I'm going to do with them after that, or if I'm going to start something else new. And then I have a Candlekeep Scooby-Doo Monday night group where they are actually employees of Candlekeep, but they're doing the Candlekeep Mysteries Adventures. I just skip a lot of the weird plot hooks. It's like, hey, the book dumps off the shelf at you, go do the adventure thing. We started that campaign during COVID, and we're now starting our 3rd year. And as you can hear in my voice, my final project is getting over this stupid COVID.
It's not Scooby-Doo. It's mystery type adventures is what he meant by the Scooby-Doo thing, right?
Right, as in it's episodic.
It's episodic.
Each adventure is its own
Shaggy at Druid. That's funny.
Right. I caught COVID at my damn wedding reception, people.
That's rough, man.
Usually you catch a bouquet.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what all I've got going on, Jay.
Awesome. Anna?
Real quick, on Friday, I will do a mapping live stream on Friday night. I'm not sure if Alyssa Fadian will be on or not, but I will be on, and I will be working primarily on Altamira, and I will do some heraldry. Those are the plans for Friday. And then the next week, the plan is to get the 598 2022 edition out the door, the final version for next week, and then some campaign deep dives for my mid-tier patrons, and maybe, if I'm lucky, a little look into the Blackmore update for my top tier patrons too. So the Blackmore integration, so to speak. I've done some more thinking and sketching and stuff like that to update the Blackmore area from the kind of the short version that we got on the Darlene map to a deeper dive into integrate the Arneson's Blackmore. So there's some more thoughts and stuff on that part. So those are the highlights for the next week.
Awesome. So I'll go through this quick. I want to say, I really don't know how you do it, Stephen, Eric, all the writing, because I am doing the first hardcore writing ever I've done for this box set, and man, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's very different than being a DM because you need it. Yeah. So I'm learning as I go, and it is trial by fire here, but that's only one. That's the only way to learn here. Real quick, let me burn through this. Maybe I won't hit a wrong button. Picture, this is an actual scene where we stopped in the Monster Beneath, adventure number 966. They are not sword race. They're called Soulless, a creature I created. It's going to go in the box set, and this is some of our great terrain. That's on the very top of that thing. That's the Thief Acrobat. Yeah, someone in our game plays a 2nd edition Thief Acrobat, if you can believe that. I mean, I think we had 3 in our campaign of 42 years. So neat high up stuff, and that is, we finish this up tomorrow night. We have a huge giveaway for all you people with 3D printers. I gave it away last month. It's in 2 parts. That we're doing another Hauntwood Scriptorium. That it's entirety in STL. It's 5 gigs of files, everyone, for this. The Hauntwood Scriptorium by our great sponsor, Gamescape 3D, Jeremy. This is a beautiful setup. He printed the entire thing for us and is sending it to us. More work for Build a Master Crafter, but that we're giving that another one away tomorrow night. All right. And then we go Saturday night, the Slav Squad returns. Okay, yes. Darling Creep Show, Mandy, Bones, MJ Russell, Myriad, and I've been informed Josh Zarathine cannot make it due to a conflict. We are asking for a replacement. We have Stiletto Assassin, April Hill, from Ophidius, joining us as a special guest. She has a character, Fire Elementalist. She has COVID she got it at Gen Con too, but it's only Tuesday, so no, it's Wednesday. What night is it? It's Wednesday. She should be okay by Saturday. Yeah, and it's remote, so. Amy, you're printing it. That's cool. Very, very cool. Bill has a lot of painting to do. Yeah, so that is Saturday. And then Sunday, I continue my Wall of Fame deep dive, Egg of the Phoenix and Tomb of the Lizard King. That is Anna and I, and probably Tim will be discussing that on Sunday as we do that for our Gavin show. And then, yes, I am playing Cthulhu in 2 weeks. Now we have a fantasy mapping show a week from Friday, and we got to work about the guests. The Friday after, Matt Ryan from Chaosium is game mastering for Zach Glazer, Anna, Alyssa Faden, and myself. It'll be a game on this channel Friday, August 26th.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Thank you. That'll be fun. We don't know what he's going to torture us with, but yeah.
Yep.
What?
Jay,
yeah, thank you.
Jay, I'm running Tomb of the Lizard King for my 5e Candlekeep group as a little side
Oh,
quest.
cool. Cool.
Just the bottommost layers of it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to get to play. I get to play. It'll be the second time I play Call of Cthulhu. I played it last time was at Gary Con. Alyssa Faden game mastered for me, and I was like a platinum badge, and it was a room filled with all diamond badges. I'm like, oh my God, Alyssa. It was like, it was crazy. Yeah, it was like, what a following Alyssa has at Gary Con. I was like, nuts. Yep. Well, that was a fun game. So, yes, this is going to be a big thing with Matt actually game mastering for us. That's all I got right now. Just minors. Ed Greenwood will be on sometime in the month too. We're going to do Monsters of Greyhawk and the Realms, and that'll be the discussion. So I think that may be the 21st. We're still working on that, finalizing that date on a Sunday. All right, let me do the giveaways real quick. Last call. You get your choice of two, and then we're going to do a raid into Guild Superior, I believe, and then we're going to call it a night. All right, well, during the raid. So last call on the giveaways. Let me do these real quick. I usually hit a wrong freaking button at this point, everyone, and ruin the entire thing, and they got to re-enter anything anyway. Because I am, it's so much.
Throw up the mongrel's tongue cutting out. You were.
What's that?
Throw up the mongrel.
You want me to throw up Tim? Do you really want me to do that to Steven and Eric?
All these people have never seen it.
What is happening?
Here come the mongrels.
Enough of this shit. Give him the tongue. Thanks for the lift.
Look at the face of Eric. Yeah. That's my buddy Tim. Yeah, you played with Tim before.
Yeah.
That's the mongrels.
It didn't look like that.
Yeah, no. That's he did that as a spoon. That's the yes.
Yeah.
Adonis
and
is so good.
His daughter helped making all
yes,
the sounds.
That is
stuff,
the mongrels rip your tongue out but leave you alive, and then they put the tongues on their shield and they animate them and they flutter. And the more tongues you have, the higher status you have.
Well, I have to say, as a owner of a tentacle wand, I like that.
Yes, you do. Oh, that's right. Venarian Vord's got a tentacle rod. I forgot about that.
Yep.
By the way, I
just
just
had a very, 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 very high level tongue, but.
Oh, that's right, with Gerald Bloodmoon. Yes. Oh, he sold that off.
Sold it to a strange dwarf. With
Lord. Yes.
Friends. I'm sure that'll turn out to be. Just
Lord
fine.
Omni. He sold it to Lord Omni.
I started up Omni for 5e, Eric, because I wasn't happy with the version and Tales from the Yawning Portal.
Closing it. TMI. Yes. So here we go. The first winner. Armin. Oh, Armin, I got to do something else. You're New Zealand, man. I'll figure out a gift certificate of some sort for you. Because shipping to New Zealand would be not cost effective, but I'll make sure you get something. All right. I'll probably give you a Reaper gift certificate. Is that all right? Second one. Get your choice of two. Keith, Rose GR. Get with me on which are these, Keith. We got Beyond the Crystal Cave, Keeping the Borderlands, Bone Hill. These are all reprints. Needle, Bane of Luo, and Swamp Light. You get your choice of two. You like that? But hey, Sunday night, I'm giving away these because it's Sunday. Tomb of the Lizard King and the Egg of the Phoenix, which we're going to talk about both. All right? Got those. Holding on to them for Sunday. So, all right. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Anna. We went very long. We went 40 minutes long. I really appreciate that. Monster crowds. Thank you, audience, for participating. Stephen, thank you for those that came in with you and watch what we're all about here. And thank you for Luke Gygax and everyone else who hopped in just to say hello. It really means a lot. The community is doing very well and growing. And lastly, Virtual Greyhawk Con 3. The events to sign up for an event starts on the 20th at noon Central. All right, we have like 50 some events in now. Greyhawk Reborn just put in 17. Troller Games supposed to have organized play going in. Rob Phantom, did Chuck get with you on that yet? We're going to have organized play for Troll Lord, and we got a whole bunch of other things going on. I have my joust. I'm going to be reaching out. We're going to have Eric. We're going to and Steve. We're going to have the Ask the Experts at the end, like we have had the first 2 years. It's October 2nd, Sunday night. So if you can mark that down, gents, that would be awesome. I know that Joe Block said he'd participate and Malden said he'd participate. Sound like a good... All right, there you go. Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, October 2nd. If you guys want to participate, you're both more than welcome. It's a great Ask the Expert show. It's a monster show at the end of the last show of the con. So, yep. Awesome. Oh, cool. That's awesome, Steve. Rick, oh my God, my brain just shut off that you did that. Open up channels on my Discord. So, all right. See you all tomorrow night, 7:30. We'll have a great game tomorrow night. We'll finish up. I got a full crew. Bill's back. So let me set this rate up. Yes, everyone. I'm going to hit the wrong button. You know I am. Here comes a freaking wrong button.
While he's doing that, if there are any former triads or circles out there that haven't already gotten with me on Discord, please send me a PM here on Twitch or on Discord. I'm easy to find. I'm Argerco. Probably hashtag 8038 or something stupid like that. But just search for Argerco. You'll find it.
How
We
come
have
I
a
can't?
secret Discord server.
I can't find Superior Adventure Guild Superior. Where the hell are they? Give me a sec. Shit. I know they're on.
That's good. Kind of
Guild Superior. No wonder I'm typing it in wrong. Guild Superior. All right, so we're gonna almost increase their numbers by about 8 times, everyone. So please give them a follow. They're a Greyhawk stream. I think they're doing Ghost of Saltmarsh right now, and they're part of Virtual Greyhawk Con as well. So please give them a nice follow when you go in. Starting to rate up. Uh, 83, 85, 88, almost 90 people. That's awesome. 5, 4, 3,
Good night,
2,
everybody.
1. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night,
Awesome.
everyone.
About 90 going in there. They're going to be happy about that. All right, let me take this off. Make sure it went in. It did. All right, we're good. Thank you both. That was